Kansas is known for its endless plains, golden fields, and quiet rural roads. But hidden among the vast farmland lie towns that no longer appear on maps, towns abandoned yet far from empty. After the sun sets, these ghost towns whisper through the wind, carrying sounds of footsteps, creaking doors, and faint voices that seem to come from nowhere. Some travelers who dare to drive through the empty streets report seeing figures moving among the ruins, shapes in windows, and shadows that vanish when approached. Tonight, we explore 25 abandoned farm towns in Kansas, lost to silence, where the past lingers and the living are not always alone. Farm towns are often places of community, laughter, and daily toil. Families gather, barns echo with life, and the air is rich with the scent of soil and livestock. But in Kansas, history has claimed some towns entirely. Crops fail, populations leave, and buildings crumble. Yet these towns are not empty. Visitors at night report seeing ghostly silhouettes in the streets, hearing whispers from empty barns, and watching doors swing open on their own. Some swear they hear the sound of children playing, long after the schools were abandoned. It is said that the land remembers, and the ghosts of those who lived here refuse to fade. Welcome, friend. I am glad you have come. Together, we will walk through abandoned main streets, peek into empty barns, and explore the silent houses that still echo with life from the past. Together, we will walk through abandoned main streets, peek into empty barns, and explore the silent houses that still echo with life from the past. Take a deep breath, steady your nerves, and step carefully into the quiet that holds more than it shows. That holds more than it shows. Hollow Creek sits quietly in central Kansas, a town once alive with families and daily routines, now reduced to silent streets and abandoned buildings. By day, the sun casts long shadows across cracked pavement, revealing remnants of a community that once thrived. Yet, as darkness falls, the town seems to awaken in ways that defy explanation. Visitors who venture into Hollow Creek after nightfall report an unsettling sense of presence. Figures appear briefly at the edge of vision, moving through streets that are otherwise empty. They are faint and fleeting. Shadows of a time when the town was bustling. The movements are subtle, almost deliberate. As though the town itself is replaying memories preserved within its structures. Windows of deserted homes glow with flickering lights. There is no electricity, yet a pale illumination dances across broken panes, casting shadows that hint at activity inside. Those who look closely may catch the movement of shapes, the suggestion of life within spaces that have been abandoned for decades. The glow rises and falls, mimicking the pulse of human presence, yet it belongs to no living inhabitant. The soundscape of Hollow Creek adds another layer of mystery. Distant laughter carries along the empty streets, light and playful, but undeniably human. The echoes of children can be heard near the old schoolhouse, though it has been closed for years. Some say the laughter comes from unseen recesses of the building, others insist it drifts across the fields, touching the edges of the town before fading into silence. Deserted homes hold their own secrets. Doors creak when no wind is present, and floorboards groan under the weight of invisible steps. Visitors have reported glimpsing figures standing behind cracked curtains or reflected in dusty mirrors, only for the image to vanish when approached. The town seems alive in fragments, moments frozen in time yet continuously replaying. Even the streets themselves carry a sense of history and presence. Empty benches, rusted street signs, and abandoned vehicles suggest stories of those who once inhabited the town. Shadows move along sidewalks as though retracing steps of past residents. Street lamps, though long inoperative, sometimes cast a faint glow, revealing movement that disappears as quickly as it appears. Sometimes cast a faint glow, revealing movement that disappears as quickly as it appears. The old schoolhouse at the heart of Hollow Creek is a focal point for the paranormal. Its playground is overgrown, swings swaying in the wind, yet some claim they have seen the swings move without any breeze. Laughter echoes from within empty classrooms, and the faint sound of chalk against blackboards carries through the night. Visitors describe a sense of being watched, as if the echoes of students and teachers persist long after the doors have closed. Abandoned houses also tell a story. Some rooms appear freshly used, with chairs slightly moved or objects shifted from their resting places. The faint scent of past inhabitants lingers in the air, a reminder that memory can leave a physical mark. Windows reflect silhouettes that vanish when confronted, creating a disorienting and immersive experience for anyone exploring the town after dark. Hollow Creek's desolation is part of its haunting. The absence of life amplifies the presence of what remains. Empty streets, silent buildings, and forgotten objects form a canvas for the supernatural. The town seems to exist in a dual state, both abandoned and inhabited. A place where the past never fully lets go. Visitors report the sensation of being followed by unseen eyes. Footsteps echo along alleyways where no one walks. Cold drafts appear without cause, brushing past those who wander through homes or down the main street. Doors and windows respond unpredictably, sometimes opening or closing without touch, adding a layer of tension to the eerie stillness. The landscape surrounding Hollow Creek contributes to the atmosphere. Rolling plains and distant trees frame the town in isolation, creating a sense of vulnerability for those who explore it at night. The wind carries the faintest whispers, as though the land itself is speaking in fragments of memory, blending with the ghostly presence of figures and laughter within the town. Hollow Creek demonstrates how a place can retain the essence of its history long after people have left. The town preserves moments, replaying fragments of life and memory through light, sound, and movement. Visitors are not simply witnessing ghosts, but experiencing the lingering imprint of generations that once called this town home. Every street, home, and abandoned building contributes to a narrative that is both mysterious and compelling. The flickering lights, moving shadows, and distant laughter form a tapestry of presence that feels deliberate, as though the town itself is guiding those who enter to witness its history in spectral form. Hollow Creek is more than an abandoned town. It is a repository of memory, a space where past lives continue to interact with the present. For those willing to explore after nightfall, the town offers an immersive experience. A haunting journey through the echoes of its former inhabitants. Visitors leave with a heightened awareness of time, memory, and the subtle ways in which places can hold on to the essence of those who once lived within them. Even as the sun rises and the town returns to quiet stillness, Hollow Creek remains alive in its own way. The streets, the homes, and the schoolhouse retain their unseen occupants, their movements and sounds etched into the fabric of the town. It is a place where the past lingers, inviting those who venture within to witness the delicate boundary between memory and the present. And to feel the persistent heartbeat of a town that refuses to be forgotten. Dusty field stretches across western Kansas, an endless expanse of flat plains under an open sky. The wind moves relentlessly here, carrying grains of dust and a peculiar sense of isolation. At first glance, the landscape appears empty, quiet, and still, yet those who traverse these plains at night tell a different story. Travelers often speak of whispers carried by the wind, voices that seem human but vanish when approached. They drift across the plains, brushing against the ears of those walking alone, a faint conversation that disappears before meaning can be grasped. The sound is subtle, almost hesitant, yet it leaves a lasting impression, an echo of lives long past. Old barns dot the fields, their wooden structures weathered by decades of sun and storms. Within these barns, shadows are said to move among the rusting farm equipment. Shapes glide silently from one corner to another, as if the buildings themselves are inhabited by unseen caretakers. Some claim to see fleeting figures tending to forgotten tools or watching from lofts high above. Doors open and slam without cause. A gentle push or a sudden gust seems unlikely in these sturdy structures, yet the sound resonates sharply, echoing across the empty plains. Travelers report standing in the midst of still air when a barn door swings shut violently, sending a shiver through the body. The phenomena are unpredictable, leaving witnesses wary and alert, eyes scanning every corner for movement. The dust on the ground often bears traces of unexplained footsteps. They appear in patterns that suggest someone walked deliberately, yet no one is present. Boots, heels, and bare feet leave impressions that vanish after a while, as though the earth itself has been disturbed by invisible visitors. Observers sometimes crouch to inspect them, but the tracks dissolve before answers can emerge, adding to the sense of mystery that permeates the area. At dusk, the plains take on a haunting beauty. The sky turns shades of deep amber and purple, casting long shadows across the fields. Silhouettes of abandoned silos and weathered fences stretch in the fading light. Travelers report a peculiar sensation of being observed, the feeling that eyes follow them from places unseen. Even when alone, the land feels alive with presence, as if carrying memories embedded in the soil. Barns with open doors reveal interiors frozen in time. Rusted wagons, hay bales, and broken tools sit untouched. Yet some nights, the equipment seems rearranged. Visitors notice shifts in positions or items missing entirely. The sounds of movement echo in these spaces. Soft steps, creaks, and the faint rustle of fabric. That cannot be explained by wind alone. The wind itself carries subtle voices. It whistles through fence posts and hollowed beams, forming tones that resemble conversation or lamentation. At times, travelers swear they hear their own names whispered softly, drawing them toward distant barns or open fields. The sensation is unnerving, a combination of curiosity and caution that makes each step deliberate. Old farmhouses scattered across the plains hold similar energy. Windows reflect figures standing inside when no one is present. Rooms appear empty, yet faint impressions of activity linger, chairs slightly moved, doors ajar, or the faint smell of wood smoke in unlit fireplaces. Those who enter feel a chill in the air, a presence that is patient, silent, and observant. At night, the plains themselves transform. Shadows stretch unnaturally, merging with the dim shapes of barns and fences. Travelers describe the feeling of walking through a landscape that shifts subtly under moonlight. Shapes seem to emerge from the horizon, watching, moving, yet always retreating when approached. The combination of darkness, wind, and open space amplifies the eerie sensations, creating a landscape both beautiful and unsettling. Even in the morning, traces remain. Footsteps in dust. Doors left slightly ajar. And subtle shifts in objects. Subtle shifts in objects. No human witnessed. It is a place where the wind speaks. Those who leave the fields often speak of the experience as transformative. The beauty of the plains is inseparable from the unease that accompanies it. Dusty fields is a reminder of the delicate balance between solitude and observation. Between stillness and movement. It is a place where the land itself seems to remember. Where whispers follow the wind. And shadows wait patiently for those who dare to pass through. In every barn, along every fence, and across every stretch of open land, the presence of the unseen endures. The wind carries it across the plains, touching anyone who walks beneath the wide sky. Dusty Fields remains a silent witness, an expanse where history and mystery intertwine. Leaving an impression that is impossible to forget and impossible to fully explain. Silent Valley in eastern Kansas is a place that seems to resist notice. From the main road, the town is almost invisible, its streets disappearing into the surrounding fields as though the earth itself is reclaiming them. The air feels different here, still and heavy, carrying a quiet that is almost palpable, as if the landscape itself is holding its breath. At night, shadows stretch across empty streets. Some say a woman in old-fashioned clothing walks the roads, her figure faint and distant. She moves deliberately, yet when approached, she vanishes as if swallowed by the darkness. Her presence is unsettling but not threatening, a spectral reminder of a time that seems to linger stubbornly within the town. Abandoned houses line the streets, their windows dark yet alive with flickering lights that appear and disappear without explanation. The paint peels from walls and doors creak in the night wind, but these sounds are accompanied by something else, something subtle and almost imperceptible. Faint music drifts from the empty church at the center of town, a melody that feels both comforting and haunting. The notes carry across the empty streets, lingering in the ears of those who dare to listen closely. The buildings themselves seem to hold memory, preserving echoes of life that has long since faded. Floors creak under invisible footsteps. And shadows stretch across walls in ways that defy the natural movement of light. Even the air feels thick with stories untold, carrying whispers that vanish when one tries to follow them. Visitors often describe a sensation of being watched. There is no one there, yet a presence seems to linger just beyond sight. Trees sway in patterns that suggest intent, and the wind moves in ways that feel deliberate, as though the town itself is aware of intruders. Every corner, every alley, carries an almost imperceptible tension, a subtle hum of the past persisting into the present. In the old church, pews sit empty, and the altar remains undisturbed. The faint strains of a hymn can sometimes be heard, drifting through the cracked windows and onto the street. The sound is soft, almost fragile, yet it carries across the town with a clarity that is difficult to explain. Those who follow it often find only silence and a lingering sense that something unseen has observed their approach. Street lamps flicker intermittently, their light casting long, shifting shadows that seem to move independently. Doors creak open and closed, though the buildings remain empty. And the faint smell of wood smoke lingers as if from fires long extinguished. The town itself seems alive, a quiet, persistent heartbeat that beats just beneath the surface of reality. Abandoned homes reveal glimpses of former life. Curtains sway despite the absence of wind. Furniture appears slightly rearranged from one visit to the next. There is a sense that someone, or something, maintains the rhythm of this place, preserving it in a state that is neither fully present nor entirely gone. The streets themselves are unnerving in their stillness. Gravel crunches underfoot, though no one else walks the roads. The horizon is empty, fields stretching in every direction. Yet the town remains at the center, a focal point for stories that are half remembered and half imagined. Shadows move in peripheral vision, shapes that vanish when confronted, leaving only the lingering impression of movement and life. Visitors often describe a strange pull, a subtle urging to continue deeper into the town. A strange pull, a subtle urging to continue deeper into the town. Despite the sense of unease, it is as if Silent Valley wants to be explored, to reveal itself only in fragments and fleeting impressions. Every house, every street, every flicker of light seems designed to hint at the stories embedded within its structures, without ever fully revealing them. Time itself feels different in Silent Valley. Moments stretch and compress in ways that feel unnatural, as though the town exists partly outside conventional perception. Sounds echo longer than they should, shadows hang heavier, and the silence between noises carries weight. Every step feels significant, as if the town acknowledges each movement and records it in some unseen ledger. Even in daylight, the town is strange and quiet. The sun illuminates empty streets, yet there is an absence of warmth or vitality. Windows stare blankly, doorways gape like silent mouths, and the wind carries distant echoes of laughter, conversation, and life that once was. The town feels paused, caught in a moment that refuses to move forward, preserving its past in the most tangible ways. Silent Valley is more than a location, it is an experience. It demands attention, drawing visitors into a state of awareness that heightens perception. Every sound, every movement, every shadow becomes significant. The town exists as both place and memory. A space where the boundary between the living and the echoes of the past is thin, permeable, and constantly shifting. To walk the streets of Silent Valley is to enter a liminal space. Shadows linger longer than they should, lights appear without cause. And the faint melody from the church seems to follow travelers no matter where they go. The woman in old-fashioned clothing. The flickering lamps. And the subtle shifts within abandoned homes all contribute to an atmosphere of quiet unease. A town that is present but never fully tangible. Those who leave carry the sense that the town remains behind. Observing, waiting, and persisting in a state beyond ordinary understanding. Silent Valley is a place where the past and present coexist. Where echoes of life continue to ripple through empty streets. And where every corner hides the potential for discovery and mystery. It is a town of silence. But that silence speaks volumes to those willing to listen. Ghost Hollow in north-central Kansas lies quiet under the vast prairie sky. The wind sweeps across the landscape, carrying whispers through the tall grasses. And rattling the old wooden structures that have stood for generations. The buildings lean slightly, their boards warped and faded by decades of sun and storms. Travelers passing through report a sense of being observed, a weight in the air that feels older than the earth beneath their feet. As evening falls, shadows gather around the remnants of the old homesteads. Figures appear at the edges of vision, often in front of derelict buildings, standing silently. Men and women in period clothing are reported, watching the windswept plains, unmoving. Watching the windswept plains, unmoving, then vanishing when approached. Leaving only an echo of presence, a fleeting memory that lingers long after the eyes see nothing. Inside the empty structures, the atmosphere changes. Kitchens that have not been used for decades sometimes carry the faint scent of smoke and cooking, as if someone just prepared a meal. The air feels warm in pockets, inexplicably so, contrasting with the chill that creeps through the cracked windows. Some travelers hear the soft clatter of dishes, the scrape of chairs, or the whisper of footsteps along creaking floors, yet no one is there. The wind interacts with the hollow spaces, producing eerie sounds that seem almost intentional. A board bends under pressure, then snaps back with a hollow thud. Doors swing slightly on broken hinges, releasing gusts that carry distant voices or laughter. It is as though the old homesteads themselves remember the lives that once filled them, their memory etched into the very timbers. Visitors often speak of fleeting glimpses through windows. A woman in a long dress may appear near a dusty table, frozen mid-motion, then disappear before a second glance. Sometimes a man stands at the doorway, his face turned toward the horizon as if waiting for someone who will never arrive. These apparitions are not threatening, but their presence is undeniable, leaving a mixture of awe and unease in those who witness them. The landscape around Ghost Hollow adds to the mystery. Winds whip across the open fields, shaping the tall grasses into waves that seem to move with a life of their own. Trees at the edges of the homesteads creak and groan, their twisted limbs resembling reaching hands in the moonlight. The open sky above is vast and empty, yet it seems filled with stories, each star a silent witness to the events that unfolded on this land over a century ago. At night, the experience intensifies. Travelers report hearing conversations just beyond understanding. Whispers carried by the wind that vanish when investigated. A faint glow sometimes appears in windows, only to fade when approached, leaving the rooms cold and empty once more. Some visitors have described a sensation of being guided, as if the spirits want their attention focused on particular places. A path through the overgrown grass might seem easier to follow, leading toward a collapsed barn or an old well. Along the way, the sounds of the hollow intensify, a chorus of creaking boards, distant laughter, and soft sighs that create a sense of presence, of life lingering beyond the veil of time. The silence in Ghost Hollow is deceptive. It is never complete, always punctuated by subtle, almost imperceptible sounds. A shutter rattles. A floorboard moans. A faint murmur drifts through a doorway. These small disturbances amplify the feeling that the place is alive in a manner not bound by the ordinary rules of the world. Each sound is a reminder that the past is not gone, that memory can take shape and form within these spaces. Travelers also report emotional responses beyond simple fear. A sense of nostalgia or longing often fills the air, as if the spirits themselves carry the weight of lives lived and lost here. Visitors may feel sadness or comfort, moments of melancholy interspersed with fleeting warmth. Moments of melancholy interspersed with fleeting warmth. The duality of the experience adds depth, a reminder that these presences are echoes of ordinary lives, lives that once moved and laughed and loved within these same walls. Some nights, the prairie fog drifts low, weaving through the structures and obscuring vision. In the mist, figures become harder to distinguish, their forms ghostly and ethereal. Travelers may see shapes moving between buildings or along the edges of the field, only to vanish entirely when approached. The fog seems to magnify the sense of otherworldliness, creating an environment where the line between reality and apparition blurs. Ghost Hollow is not a place of terror but of memory and the apparitions, the sounds, the lingering sense, and the shifting shadows combine to create a cinematic tableau of the past. Visitors leave with the impression that the place is watching, remembering, and carrying on, holding on to fragments of life that refuse to fade completely. Even in daylight, the hollow retains its mystery. The structures, though dilapidated, exude a presence that is palpable. The wind carries whispers, the sunlight casts long shadows, and the air feels charged with stories. Every traveler who passes through becomes a temporary participant in the ongoing life of Ghost Hollow, part of a continuum that stretches across generations. The allure of Ghost Hollow lies not only in its spectral figures but in the richness of atmosphere. The combination of wind, weathered wood, fog, and silence forms a haunting stage upon which the past continues to perform. Visitors are drawn to it for the stories it holds, the inexplicable experiences it offers, and the reminder that time, memory, and presence can linger far longer than the living expect. To walk through Ghost Hollow is to step into a living memory. To feel the heartbeat of lives long gone yet enduring. Is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist. Where silence carries meaning. And where every creak, shadow, and whisper tells a story. Travelers leave transformed, carrying with them the lingering essence of a place that exists at the edge of time, where the past and present meet in quiet, spectral harmony. Broken lies quietly in southern Kansas, where setting casts shadows. Fields were alive. Activity. Fences alongside. Old line posts. And from of neglect. For visitors. Quiet. Deceiving. Place. The sun. Long. Travelers driving past at sunset often report seeing faint figures walking along the abandoned railway tracks. The shapes are fleeting, appearing as if moving through memory rather than reality. Sometimes, they pause and turn toward the road, their outlines blurred by distance and the fading light. Those who slow down or stop find the figures vanish without a trace, leaving the tracks empty once more. The barns scattered across the fields contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Doors creak open and shut as if someone had just entered, though no one is visible. The old wood groans under its own weight, yet the motion seems purposeful, almost alive. Shadows stretch across the walls, shifting as if they are watching anyone who ventures near. The stillness is broken by subtle movements, small signs that something unseen lingers in these abandoned spaces. Whispers are another common phenomenon reported by visitors. They drift through the fields and along the railway, faint and indistinct, repeating phrases that no living person seems to remember. The sound carries on the wind, teasing the edges of perception. Some describe it as a conversation frozen in time, fragments of voices from a past that has long since vanished. The railway itself tells a story of decay and memory. Tracks disappear under grass and weeds, the ties rotting and splintered. Yet even in decay, there is a presence. Travelers report feeling eyes upon them, a sense that the land is observing each movement, each pause, each intrusion into its forgotten history. Broken Oak's fields hold their own mysteries. Tall grasses sway in patterns that suggest invisible passage. Shadows seem to stretch longer than the sun allows, reaching toward anyone who dares to enter. The landscape is alive with subtle signs, a combination of natural movement and something that cannot be easily explained. The effect is hypnotic, drawing observers deeper into the town's quiet, unsettling embrace. The barns and farmhouses, though abandoned, are full of history. Weathered wood and broken windows frame the empty interiors. And yet, visitors often report glimpsing shapes moving through the darkness. Doors that should remain closed swing open at their approach. Or the faint echo of footsteps drifts across empty rooms. There is a sense of lingering occupancy, as though the land itself refuses to relinquish its former inhabitants entirely. As night approaches, Broken Oak transforms further, revealing glimpses of people who were never there. A whisper that seems almost human. And the railway becomes a path that seems to lead both nowhere and everywhere at once. Some visitors describe an emotional resonance in Broken Oak. It is not simply fear that settles over those who explore the area, but a feeling of time layered upon itself. Past and present overlap, creating a sense that every step taken is traced by unseen watchers. The landscape is a living memory, replaying fragments of life that existed long ago, yet refusing to be fully comprehended. Even the air carries a story. The scent of old wood, dry grass, and earth mingles with the faint aroma of something indefinable. A presence that seems to linger where life once moved. Travelers speak of a feeling of weight, as if unseen eyes track every step. The land itself seems sentient, attuned to the presence of those who enter, offering both a warning and an invitation. Broken Oak demonstrates how abandonment can preserve more than decay. Visitors leave Broken Oak with a heightened sense of awareness. The railway line, the open barns and the swaying fields remain in memory, long after the town itself is out of sight. The experience is more than a visit, it is an encounter with the lingering echoes of time. A place where past lives and present observers intersect in fleeting haunting moments. Even under the pale light of the moon, Broken Oak remains alive in its own way. The figures along the railway, the doors that open on their own, and the whispers across the fields persist. The town is not simply a relic of southern Kansas, but a space where memory, history, and the unseen converge. It is a place where the line between reality and the spectral blurs, inviting those who dare to witness its secrets and feel the subtle presence of what once was. Broken Oak is a reminder that places hold more than physical structure. They hold fragments of life, echoes of presence, and traces of the people who once walked their streets and fields. For those who venture there, the experience is a journey into the heart of memory, shadow, and the mysterious persistence of the past. Ravenwood sits quietly in central Kansas, a town that appears ordinary by day. Streets lined with modest homes and a handful of small businesses give little hint of the stories hidden in the fog that rolls in at night. It is here that visitors often first sense the presence of something beyond the ordinary. It is here that visitors often first sense the presence of something beyond the ordinary. Travelers passing by at dusk sometimes glimpse ghostly figures emerging from the mist. They move slowly, crossing the main street without hesitation, as if guided by an invisible purpose. The shapes are indistinct, human in form but pale and ethereal. Those who encounter them report a sudden chill, a sensation that passes through the body and lingers long after the figures vanish. The cemetery itself carries an air of solemnity. Yet something about it feels unsettled. Headstones, worn by time, bear names from generations past. And the earth seems to remember each story that has unfolded here. Visitors often notice subtle movements. Shadows shifting at the edge of their vision. Or faint impressions in the soil that suggest someone has walked there recently. Though the area appears empty, windows of nearby homes sometimes reveal small, silent observers. Shadows of children appear, pressed against glass as though watching the world outside. They do not move or speak, yet their presence is unmistakable, lingering long enough to be noticed. A reminder of lives that remain tethered to the town in ways unseen. As night deepens, the fog thickens, curling along streets and around lampposts. Shapes emerge and dissolve within it, crossing paths that no living person walks. Some witnesses describe the sensation of being followed, a weight in the air that grows heavier with each step. Footsteps echo in empty streets, though no one is there. The silence is punctuated by faint whispers that seem to emanate from the cemetery itself, voices too soft to understand, yet unmistakably human in tone. Locals speak cautiously about the phenomena, sharing stories only with those they trust. They describe the fleeting figures as respectful observers, never harming anyone, yet their presence is unsettling. People passing through Ravenwood often feel compelled to hurry past certain streets or avoid the cemetery entirely after dark. The town sleeps uneasily beneath the watch of unseen eyes, as if conscious of the memories that linger in its corners. At the heart of Ravenwood, the main street becomes a stage for these spectral appearances. Figures cross from one side to the other, pausing briefly in the glow of streetlights, before vanishing into the fog. Travelers have reported cars stalling when near these crossings. Engines cutting out unexpectedly, as if the presence demands acknowledgement. Those who leave the vehicle to investigate sometimes experience cold hands brushing their arms, and a sudden dizziness that warns them to retreat. The cemetery itself holds particular fascination. Gravestones rise unevenly from the ground, some leaning at precarious angles. Flowers, often fresh despite no one tending them, appear atop graves, as though placed by invisible hands. Some visitors report seeing faint outlines of people walking among the headstones, stopping to read names or touch the markers, yet when approached, the figures dissolve like smoke. The earth feels alive here, as though remembering every step, every story, every sorrow. Fog and shadow play across the town in ways that defy explanation. Street corners take on shapes that shift with each glance. Trees sway in windless moments, casting unnatural patterns on the pavement. The air is thick with anticipation, a subtle pressure that makes hearts race and eyes strain to see more clearly. Visitors feel drawn into a world where time and memory overlap, where the veil between the living and the departed seems thin and porous. Stories of the children in windows are perhaps the most poignant. Locals say they are echoes of those lost long ago, young lives interrupted by accidents or illness. Their spirits returning to witness the town they could not grow old in. Travelers report feeling a soft tug at the heart, a melancholy that is palpable. Almost like a message carried on the wind. The fog rolls on, embracing streets, homes, and the cemetery. Every shadow hints at movement, every gust of wind carries whispers. Ravenwood seems ordinary from a distance, yet it holds secrets that reveal themselves to those who linger, who notice the subtleties of light and dark, sound and silence. A place where the living and the departed coexist in quiet proximity. A town shaped as much by its unseen residents as by the people who walk its streets. As dawn approaches, the fog begins to lift. And the impressions with them, a lingering sense that the past is never fully gone. The cemetery, the fog, the shadows of children, and the silent watchers all remain, patiently waiting for the next evening, when the mist will return, and the town will once again host those who walk between two worlds. Ravenwood is more than a town. It is a living memory. A place where whispers and shadows preserve the stories of those who came before. Travelers pass through, catching glimpses of what lies beyond, and leave with the knowledge that some corners of Kansas hold mysteries that endure. Quietly, patiently, for anyone willing to see, to feel, and to remember. Whispering Pines in western Kansas sits quietly among towering pines that stretch high into the sky. The town feels almost hidden, a small cluster of buildings surrounded by endless fields and the dense forest that gives it its name. The pines sway in the wind, their branches creaking and groaning as if they are whispering secrets to one another, secrets that only the forest itself can understand. Travelers passing through often notice figures moving between the trees. Sometimes they appear to follow cars along the quiet roads, gliding silently among the shadows. Other times, they wander into the open fields, vanishing without a trace as soon as they are noticed. Their forms are vague, like a memory caught in motion. Yet their presence leaves a lingering sense of being observed. A subtle tension that is impossible to ignore. Old barns line the outskirts of town, their wood weathered and gray. The boards groan under the weight of unseen forces. And doors that have long been sealed seem to shudder or swing slightly on their hinges. Windows glow with strange lights, even though no one has lived in the surrounding houses for decades. The illumination is soft, flickering, as if a candle has been lit by invisible hands, casting long shadows that dance across the empty rooms. The streets of Whispering Pines are quiet, almost unnaturally so. The crunch of gravel under tires is startlingly loud, and every small noise echoes in the night. Occasionally, the wind carries faint whispers, so soft they might be mistaken for the rustling of pine needles. But to those who listen closely, the voices seem intentional, almost conversational, as if the forest and the town itself are speaking in a language that is both familiar and alien. Visitors describe a sense of unease that builds slowly as they move through the town. Shadows shift in ways that defy natural light, stretching across streets and buildings, sometimes forming shapes that appear almost human. Even the stars above seem to be dimmed by the presence of something intangible, as though the sky itself is aware of the activity below. The abandoned houses hold particular fascination and dread. Doors open when no one is near, and furniture appears rearranged from one night to the next. Some claim to hear the faint sounds of laughter, footsteps, or conversations that disappear when they draw near. The walls seem to hum softly, a vibration that is barely perceptible but impossible to ignore, like the memory of lives long past pressing against the present. In the forest beyond the town, the pines grow denser. The figures are more frequent. Some travelers report seeing people in clothing from decades ago, moving silently among the trees. They vanish, leaving behind only footprints in the undergrowth that quickly fade into the dirt. Lights appear. Between the trunks, small and distant at first, then moving closer. As if guiding or luring observers deeper into the forest. The town has a rhythm of its own, a quiet cadence that is both unsettling and compelling. Every creak of a board, rustle of leaves, and flicker of light seems purposeful, contributing to an atmosphere of anticipation. Moments stretch, shadows linger, and sounds echo longer than they should, creating an experience that is both immersive and disorienting. Travelers often report the sensation of being watched, though no one is visible. Eyes seem to follow movement from the corners of the street, from windows, and from among the trees. The feeling is subtle, almost like a brush of air on the skin, yet persistent enough to make one glance over a shoulder repeatedly, searching for something that is never truly there. At night, the forest comes alive with a quiet energy. Figures drift across fields. Barns creak. Lights pulse in abandoned homes. The wind carries whispers that seem to respond to movement, bending and shifting as if it is aware of those who walk the roads. The town exists in a delicate balance between the living and the echoes of what has been. A space where memory and presence intertwine seamlessly. Even during the day, Whispering Pines retains an air of mystery. The sunlight filters through the dense canopy of pines, casting shadows that move with a life of their own. Windows of abandoned houses reflect more than the sky, showing glimpses of shapes and forms that vanish the moment they are directly observed. The town is still and quiet, yet full of hints and signs that it is far from empty. Visitors leave Whispering Pines with a lingering sense that the town remains aware, continuing to observe long after they have gone. The forest, the buildings, and the streets all hold layers of memory, creating a place that feels alive in a subtle, almost imperceptible way. Every shadow, every light, and every sound is part of a story that refuses to be fully revealed, leaving an impression of a town suspended between the past and the present. Whispering Pines is more than a location. The figures drift among the trees. The abandoned buildings pulse with a faint life of their own. Where curiosity and caution meet. Where every step taken feels meaningful. And where the line between the visible and invisible is blurred. Leaving visitors to wonder what is real and what belongs to the lingering presence of Whispering Pines. Blackwater in eastern Kansas is a town that seems frozen in time. The streets are quiet, paved with history and lined with buildings that have stood for over a century. Wooden facades fade under years of sun and storm, and the sidewalks creak underfoot, echoing faintly in the emptiness. Travelers passing through often speak of an unsettling feeling, as if the town itself is aware of their presence and is quietly observing. At night, the atmosphere changes. The faint sound of horse hooves resonates along the streets. A rhythmic clatter that seems to come from nowhere. There are no stables, no horses in sight, yet the sound persists. Growing and fading like a memory replaying itself. Those who hear it often stop, frozen, straining to see the source, only to find empty streets stretching into darkness. Lights in the old storefronts flicker on and off, unsteady as if powered by some unseen hand. The warm glow reveals displays long abandoned, jars and trinkets frozen in time, yet somehow, the windows appear active. Shadows move across the interiors, and some visitors claim to see shopkeepers behind counters, adjusting goods or leaning over ledgers. When approached, the figures vanish as if they were never there, leaving only silence and the faint creak of old wood. The town's buildings seem alive with echoes. Doors swing on broken hinges, releasing small gusts of wind that carry whispers through the empty streets. Visitors feel the sensation of being followed. Shadows brushing past them at the edges of perception. Some describe the air as thick, charged with anticipation. As though the town is holding its breath, waiting for something long forgotten. Footsteps echo along the alleys and overgrown sidewalks, but when searched for, they vanish. Travelers report glimpses of figures in period clothing walking past without acknowledgement. Their forms slightly translucent, blending with the night. The air carries scents of leather, smoke, and old wood. Fleeting and unexpected, evoking the sense of lives that once thrived in the town. The town square holds particular fascination. The old fountain at its center gurgles softly, yet no water flows. Figures appear along its edges, sometimes standing in conversation, other times simply staring outward as though watching the horizon. These apparitions are silent, yet their presence is intense, compelling anyone nearby to pause, to feel the weight of a past that refuses to fade. Blackwater's old church offers another layer to its mysteries. Visitors hear faint hymns carried on the wind, voices harmonizing from nowhere and everywhere at once. Candles flicker within the empty sanctuary, illuminating pews that appear occupied by shadowed forms. A chill settles in the air, distinct and sudden, prompting shivers and a heightened awareness of the environment. No one inside sees anyone, yet the sense of presence is undeniable. Along the alleys and back streets, lights appear intermittently, small orbs that drift and vanish without warning. Some claim these are remnants of lanterns once carried by townsfolk, now lingering in the space between memory and reality. The movement of these lights often corresponds with other phenomena, a whispered conversation, the faint clatter of steps, or a fleeting shadow crossing a doorway. A whispered conversation, the faint clatter of steps, or a fleeting shadow crossing a doorway. Those who linger in Blackwater report a disorienting sense of time. Hours can feel like minutes, and moments stretch unnaturally. Each building tells a story through its atmosphere, the faint noises, and the shifting shadows that appear without explanation. Visitors often leave feeling as though they have walked through history itself, guided by invisible hands. The outskirts of Blackwater are equally haunting. Overgrown paths lead to abandoned homes, barns, and general stores. Fences sag and creak, yet figures sometimes appear near them, watching travelers with unreadable expressions before disappearing into the night. The wind carries low murmurs, fragmented words, and indistinct laughter, suggesting a life that continues unseen, threading through the landscape in subtle ways. Fog often rolls in from the east, wrapping the streets in a soft haze. It blurs edges, softens sounds, and makes the familiar appear strange. Shapes move within the fog, appearing solid and then evaporating like mist. Travelers describe a sensation of being watched, even when the streets are empty. A lingering awareness that the town itself is alive with memory and intent. Some nights, the phenomena intensify. Lights blaze in windows without power. Shadows move more swiftly. And the sounds of hooves, footsteps, and voices rise in pitch and clarity. Visitors feel a mixture of awe and unease. Drawn to explore while simultaneously sensing boundaries that should not be crossed. Blackwater maintains a balance between invitation and warning. Offering glimpses into another layer of reality. Even in daylight, the town retains its enigmatic aura. Sunlight illuminates the worn facades, casting long shadows that shift with the time of day. The quiet is punctuated by occasional creaks and sighs of old wood, reminders that the past is never truly gone. Every corner of Blackwater holds traces of lives lived, leaving the visitor with the impression that the town remembers, observes, and continues to exist in its own timeless rhythm. To wander through Blackwater is to traverse a space where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist. The flickering lights, fleeting figures, and whispered sounds create a living tapestry of memory. A town suspended between what was and what remains. Visitors leave carrying the essence of Blackwater with them. A subtle, lingering presence that continues to whisper long after the streets have emptied and the horse hooves have faded into silence. Old Mill Town in northern Kansas is a place where time seems to pause, leaving only the remnants of a once thriving community. The watermill, the heart of the town, sits silently by the river. Its will frozen and rotting. Wooden beams lean under the weight of years. And the mill house itself seems to sag in quiet resignation. Yet as night falls, the air changes. The mill appears to awaken. Travelers and visitors often speak of the watermill turning on its own, creaking and groaning as though powered by an invisible hand. The sound of splintering wood and moving machinery echoes through the cold night air. Those who approach cautiously see ghostly figures of workers, their outlines dim and wavering, performing tasks that are no longer possible. They operate tools and wheels as if the passage of time has left them trapped in the mill's final moments of activity. The river flowing beside the mill carries its own mysteries. Water rushes over rocks, whispering secrets that cannot be traced. The sound is faint, yet unmistakable, and some claim the voices call names or give directions in tones that are eerily human. The wind off the river seems to carry the weight of long-forgotten labor, the echoes of a town that once lived in harmony with the constant motion of the watermill. The town around the mill is quiet, abandoned long ago. Wooden sidewalks creak underfoot, empty storefronts gape like silent witnesses. And the faint outline of a church steeple rises against the night sky. Yet the energy of those who once worked here lingers. Footsteps echo along empty streets, shadows dart past windows. And the faint flicker of light sometimes appears in homes that have long been uninhabited. Inside the mill, the ghostly workers appear at all hours. They move with purpose, grinding grain, hauling sacks, or adjusting machinery. Observers often notice that these apparitions do not acknowledge their presence. Existing in a plane that overlaps the living world without interacting directly. Some claim that tools seem to shift slightly when left unattended, as if the unseen hands are still maintaining order in a place where life has long ceased. The air around Old Mill Town is heavy with the weight of history. The scent of damp wood, aged grain, and river water lingers, carrying with it an uncanny sense of nostalgia. At night, the shadows grow long, and the mill's will appears to turn in faint moonlight, even when no wind or current can account for the motion. The entire scene is both mesmerizing and unsettling, a reminder that the past never truly leaves a place it once occupied. Visitors have described the sensation of being watched, not by eyes that can be seen, but by the presence of those who remain tethered to the town. The Rivera's whispers grow louder in moments of stillness. And the wind seems to move with intention, guiding attention toward the mill. The sound of the water and the subtle movements of the mill create a symphony of activity that is impossible to verify. Yet impossible to ignore. Old Mill Town is also a place of memory and reflection. As one walks along the riverbank or steps onto the creaking mill floor, it is easy to imagine the lives of the people who built and maintained the town. Their labor, their hopes, and their routines are etched into the very structure of the mill and the surrounding buildings. At night, these echoes take form, revealing a town alive in memory and spirit, even when it appears lifeless to the casual observer. The interplay between the river, the mill, and the ghostly inhabitants is subtle yet persistent. The figures operate with quiet determination, unaware of the living world watching from the edges of the clearing. The Rivera's murmur blends with the creaking machinery, creating a cadence that feels timeless. There is a sense that the town, and especially the mill, exists in a loop, replaying its final moments of work, struggle, and life indefinitely. Walking through the streets of Old Mill Town, the silence can be both oppressive and comforting. The skeletal remains of buildings, the empty streets, and the frozen wheels tell the story of abandonment. Yet the unseen activity of the ghostly workers, the moving watermill, the voices on the Rivera remind visitors that the town is far from dead. It is a place where the past refuses to be buried, where memory manifests in movement and sound, and where the veil between what was and what is remains thin and permeable. Even the riverbank seems alive with traces of history. Footprints appear in mud that no living person has walked through. And ripples move across the water with no discernible cause. At times, mist rises from the river. It is in these moments that the stories of Old Mill Town come alive. Old Mill Town is a place that challenges perception. It is a town that no longer functions in the living world, yet pulses with activity in ways that cannot be measured. The watermill, the river, and the ghostly figures work together to create an environment that is immersive, haunting, and unforgettable. Visitors leave with the feeling that they have witnessed something beyond ordinary understanding. A glimpse into a past that continues to move, speak, and watch. The abandoned structures, the flowing river, and the spectral inhabitants of Old Mill Town form a tableau of haunting beauty. It is a town frozen in time yet alive with echoes. A place where visitors are reminded that memory and spirit can persist in ways both subtle and profound. Old Mill Town exists not only in northern Kansas but also in the realm of experience, where the past meets the present in quiet, unforgettable moments that linger long after one has departed. Visitors are reminded that memory and spirit can persist in ways both subtle and profound. A place where the past meets the present in quiet, unforgettable moments that linger long after one has departed. It is a town frozen in time yet alive with echoes. Hollow Pines sits quietly in southern Kansas, a town surrounded by miles of flat, open land and thick stands of pine trees. From a distance, it seems serene, almost picturesque, with its weathered homes and narrow streets. Yet those who linger after dusk speak of experiences that defy explanation. Travelers often report the sound of children running through the empty streets. Footsteps echo across cracked pavement, fleeting and erratic, as if little ones are chasing invisible games. The laughter carries on the wind, high-pitched and fleeting, vanishing the moment anyone attempts to follow. Windows in the older homes sometimes reveal figures watching silently. Their faces are pale, eyes hollow, fixed on the streets below as though recording every passing movement. Doors in Hollow Pines seem to have a life of their own. They open slowly, creaking with a deliberate rhythm. Inside the homes, furniture is found rearranged each morning. Chairs shifted, tables moved slightly, and items misplaced without any human intervention. The effect is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but for those staying overnight, it becomes undeniable. The house itself feels alive, as if it remembers the past and rearranges its space to reflect it. The streets carry a weight after dark. Shadows stretch unnaturally beneath the dim glow of streetlights, and the pine trees whisper with a sound that resembles voices in conversation. Visitors often feel eyes following them as they walk, a prickling sensation on the back of the neck, yet when they glance behind, the streets are empty. Some describe seeing fleeting glimpses of figures moving among the trees, vanishing before anyone can get a clear look. Hollow Pines has a history that lingers in the air. The town was once more populated, a community built on farming and logging, now largely abandoned. Stories passed down through generations tell of children lost too soon, of families who vanished without explanation, and of tragedies carried silently in the town's memory. Some say the events left impressions that refuse to fade, shaping the town into a place where the living and the echoes of the past coexist uneasily. Visitors report more than visual phenomena. Cold drafts move through homes even in the height of summer. The scent of pine mixes with something more subtle, earthy and old, like soil turned over long ago. Footsteps echo on staircases that should be empty. At night, some feel soft brushes against their arms, the sensation of a hand passing too quickly to see clearly, yet unmistakably there. It is a presence both gentle and unsettling, a reminder that the town remembers every footstep, every laugh, every sorrow. Windows in Hollow Pines hold particular fascination. Those who pass by often notice the pale figures inside. Their faces seem frozen in expressions of longing, curiosity, or sadness. On rare occasions, a figure appears to mimic the movement of the observer. A shadow of motion that vanishes the instant the person blinks. The effect is disorienting, creating a sense that the town itself is watching, judging, or perhaps simply acknowledging the intrusion of the living. At night, the pine trees themselves seem to take on a life. Windless nights are accompanied by the rustle of needles, sounding like whispers carried across the streets. Travelers often report feeling drawn into the shadows beneath the trees, sensing movement that disappears when approached. Shapes flicker between trunks, suggesting children or small figures darting between the trees, only to vanish when noticed. The effect is both eerie and hypnotic, an invitation to witness the town's otherworldly life firsthand. The homes and streets of Hollow Pines hold another mystery in the objects left behind. Personal items of visitors are sometimes misplaced or vanish entirely. Keys left on tables disappear overnight. Chairs are moved slightly closer together, as though anticipating the return of someone who will never come. The subtle shifts create an impression that the town is rearranging itself, reacting to those who wander through it, preserving its memory while subtly interacting with the living. The atmosphere of Hollow Pines is best experienced in silence. Footsteps on the streets echo in the emptiness, punctuated only by distant laughter. Or the faint creak of a swinging door. The town seems to slow time, stretching moments into hours, creating a feeling of being trapped between past and present. Travelers often leave with a sense of awe and unease, recognizing that this place is different from any other. A living memory that refuses to fade, where every shadow and whisper tells a story. Even in daylight, the town carries a weight. Shadows linger longer than they should, and the pine trees cast patterns that seem to move as the sun shifts. The feeling of being observed persists, a subtle pressure that grows heavier the longer one stays. Hollow Pines is a town caught between worlds. Children's laughter echoes without source. Shadows appear and vanish at will. Doors and furniture shift without explanation. Windows hold watchers, silent and pale. Trees and streets, homes, and trees carry memories too persistent to fade. For those who pass through, the experience is unforgettable, a haunting reminder that some places in Kansas are not as empty as they appear, and that the past continues to shape the present in quiet, mysterious ways. Those who visit Hollow Pines leave with stories they cannot fully explain. They speak of laughter in empty streets, of pale faces at windows, and of footsteps that follow. They describe furniture moved, doors opening without touch, and a sensation of being watched. The town itself seems alive, a repository of memory and presence, waiting for those who will witness its quiet, persistent mysteries. Hollow Pines endures, silent yet attentive. It is a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where the echoes of children and the whispers of shadows remind visitors that some towns carry more than just historia, they carry the living presence of all who once walked their streets. Windy Plains in central Kansas stretches endlessly under an open sky, where the wind sweeps across the fields with a force that is both freeing and unnerving. The air carries a constant murmur, the rustling of tall grasses blending with faint, indistinct voices. Travelers often describe hearing their names called, whispered in tones that seem just beyond comprehension, or phrases repeated over and over as if the land itself is trying to communicate. Figures appear at the edges of the fields, their forms indistinct and shifting with the wind. They wear old-fashioned clothing, sometimes faded and torn, moving slowly as though they are caught between the past and the present. Some observers catch glimpses of them standing motionless, staring toward the horizon, then vanishing as soon as one turns for a closer look. Their presence is subtle but undeniable, leaving a chill that lingers long after they disappear. The streets of Windy Plains are mostly empty, the houses spread wide apart and silent. Visitors report a sensation of being watched, though no eyes are visible. The wind seems to brush against the skin, carrying an invisible presence that follows closely, just at the edge of perception. Even in broad daylight, the town exudes a quiet tension, a feeling that the past is woven into the landscape and continues to move just out of sight. At night, the plains transform. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the open fields, cast by the low moonlight filtering through clouds. Figures drift silently between the rows of corn and wheat, their movement slow and deliberate. Faint lights appear in windows of long-abandoned farmhouses. Some travelers swear they hear doors creak and steps echoing across empty porches, though no one has been there for decades. The wind itself becomes a voice after dark, carrying sounds that are difficult to place. Sometimes it resembles laughter, or the soft sobbing of someone mourning. Occasionally, it repeats words in patterns that are almost understandable, a haunting cadence that draws attention even as it remains frustratingly elusive. Visitors describe the sensation of being guided or warned, as if the wind knows the intentions of those who walk through its territory. Figures in the fields are not always stationary. They sometimes follow a moving car, gliding alongside in a way that feels deliberate, though impossible. Observers report glimpses of eyes glinting in the moonlight, reflecting a knowledge beyond the ordinary. Shadows shift in unexpected ways, and even the outline of a barn or fence can appear to bend and twist, hinting at forces that defy explanation. Abandoned buildings hold particular intrigue and unease. Windows are dusty and broken, yet on some nights, light spills from within, casting patterns on the surrounding land. Doors that have long been sealed creak open on their own, and the interior floors echo with steps that do not belong to any living person. Some visitors feel a presence brushing past them in narrow hallways or behind them on the streets, leaving a trace of cold air and the faint scent of earth and old wood. The plains have a rhythm all their own. The wind shifts constantly, carrying whispers, shifting shadows, and the ever-present sensation of being observed. Even the sky seems to participate, with clouds moving in patterns that obscure and reveal light in ways that feel intentional. Time seems to stretch and contract, moments lingering longer than they should, and small sounds echo farther than expected, amplifying the feeling that Windy Plains is alive in its own secretive, watchful way. Visitors describe the sensation of stories lingering in the air. The landscape itself feels like a memory, a repository of moments both joyous and tragic, replaying faintly for those willing to notice. Every rustle of grass, flicker of light, and whisper of wind contributes to an atmosphere that is both mesmerizing and unsettling, pulling observers into the narrative of the land itself. Even during the shadows move across empty streets. Figures appear at the edges of fields, and the wind carries soft incomprehensible murmurs. The town feels suspended between what is seen and unseen, a place where the ordinary landscape hides extraordinary stories. To pass through Windy Plains is to feel the presence of the past pressing gently but insistently on the present. The wind, the figures, and the silent houses all combine to create a space that is quietly alive, watching, and speaking in ways that are subtle yet unmistakable. Travelers leave with a sense that the land continues to remember, to whisper, and to follow long after they have gone, leaving them to wonder what is real and what is a reflection of the lingering presence of Windy Plains. Windy Plains is more than a location. It is an experience of the unseen. A place where the wind carries stories, shadows move with intent, and the past remains vividly present. Every gust, every flicker of light, and every figure glimpsed in the fields is part of a narrative that refuses to be fully revealed. The plains are alive with memory and mystery, leaving visitors both awed and unsettled, suspended in a quiet tension that lingers long after the journey ends. Broken Will in western Kansas is a town suspended in time. Buildings stand abandoned, their wooden frames weathered by decades of sun, wind, and storm. Streets stretch endlessly under a pale sky, quiet except for the subtle creaks of old structures swaying with the breeze. At first glance, it seems utterly lifeless, yet there is an undercurrent of movement, a presence that refuses to be ignored. Visitors often hear footsteps echoing across the empty streets, though no one is in sight. The sound rises and falls, circling them as if guiding their path. Occasionally, a door slams in one of the abandoned houses, startling those who thought themselves alone. The town feels alive, not with ordinary life, but with memory and echoes, each creak and sigh telling a story long forgotten. At intersections, shadowy figures appear, tall and indistinct. They stand silently, observing anyone who passes by. When approached, they vanish without a trace, leaving only the wind stirring loose leaves along the cracked sidewalks. Travelers report the sensation of being followed, a pressure on their shoulders or a fleeting brush of air, as though someone is walking just out of reach. The homes themselves hold their own mysteries. Windows are broken or clouded with dust, yet from within, shapes seem to move. Curtains shift as if caught in a non-existent breeze. In some rooms, furniture tilts slightly, floorboards groan, and objects that had rested for decades appear to have been moved. The town's history clings to these structures, manifesting as subtle, unnerving signs that something unseen lingers. Broken Will is also defined by its quiet streets at night. The sun disappears behind the horizon. And shadows stretch unnaturally across the pavement. Every corner seems alive with possibility. Figures appear in peripheral vision, then vanish. When focused upon, footsteps echo, coming closer or retreating. Depending on perception. The darkness amplifies the town's otherworldly qualities, making ordinary streets feel like a stage for unseen actors. The ordinary becomes extraordinary in this eerie, forsaken place. A place where the laws of reality are bent and twisted. A place where the fabric of reality is thin. A place where the very fabric of existence is a mere illusion. Where the boundaries between reality and madness are blurred. Where the very notion of sanity is a luxury. A place where the horrors that lurk in the shadows are all too real. And the darkness closes in, making the unknown all too real. And the horrors that lurk in the shadows. The general store, long shuttered, attracts particular attention. Lights sometimes flicker within, casting long shadows across the dusty shelves. Some visitors swear they see figures leaning over counters, moving items or counting unseen money. When anyone enters, the space appears empty, yet the faint scent of smoke and aged wood lingers. A ghostly imprint of commerce and daily life that once thrived here. The church on the hill adds to Broken Will's spectral atmosphere. From the steps, visitors hear faint hymns carried on the wind, soft and indistinct. No candles burn, yet shadows of congregants appear along the pews. The sound of a swinging bell echoes irregularly, though the bell has long since fallen silent. Those who step inside feel sudden chills and a sense of quiet scrutiny, as though unseen eyes are following every movement. The wind in Broken Will carries subtle echoes of the past. Whispers trail through the streets, sometimes unintelligible, sometimes clearly forming phrases that seem to reflect a visitor's thoughts. Travelers report brief moments of dizziness, a disorientation as the town blurs the boundary between present and memory. Fog often rolls in from the plains, softening edges and making the familiar streets feel strange and unwelcoming. Empty vehicles, long decayed, line the streets as reminders of the lives that once animated this place. Occasionally, headlights flicker or the sound of a running engine is heard, yet no one is there. Visitors feel compelled to explore these relics, to trace their outlines in the dim light. Only to find that the senses deceive. Shapes shift, shadows move independently, and the air feels charged with anticipation. Warning travelers that the town's secrets are not easily uncovered. Back alleys and side streets heighten the sense of unease. Figures appear partially hidden, sometimes staring, sometimes moving purposefully. Only to vanish when noticed. The town seems to be in constant flux, the boundary between reality and memory fluid. Shaping the experience of anyone who dares linger. Even during the day, Broken Wheel exudes tension. The wind whispers through broken windows, loose boards rattle softly. And shadows stretch with the sun in ways that feel unnatural. Visitors report moments of stillness, a sudden pause in all sound. As if the town itself is holding its breath. The outskirts of the town are equally mysterious. Old barns and silos loom against the horizon, silhouetted in the shifting light. Figures are seen briefly at the edges, moving behind trees or peering from windows. The air is heavy with scents of old timber, dust, and faint traces of smoke. Every sound, from a falling branch to a distant caw, carries weight, amplifying the sense that Broken Wheel is a place where the past never fully leaves. The atmosphere is one of foreboding and unease. The feeling of dread is palpable. Visitors leave Broken Wheel with a lingering impression of unease and fascination. The echoing footsteps, slamming doors, and vanishing figures form a tapestry of subtle haunting. The town is both a physical space and a living memory, existing between the present and the past. Always observing, always whispering. To walk through Broken Wheel is to step into a place where silence is deceptive, shadows are alive, and history is never truly gone. Every corner, every building, and every flicker of movement tells a story. The town remains a testament to the persistence of memory and presence, a quiet and eerie world that draws the curious while keeping its deepest secrets carefully veiled. Fallen Oak in eastern Kansas is a landscape where the past lingers in the air, etched into the soil and structures that have stood for generations. The wide open field stretched toward the horizon, lined with weathered fences and scattered barns that creak under the weight of time. Yet as dusk settles, the atmosphere changes, thickening with an unseen presence that seems to move between the shadows. Travelers along the country roads often report seeing ghostly farmhands working the fields. Their forms are dim and transparent, moving with purpose as if tending crops long since harvested. They pause, turn, and gesture, yet vanish when approached, leaving behind only the faint impression of movement in the tall grass. The wind seems to carry their presence, brushing along the wheat and corn, whispering through the trees in a rhythm that echoes the labor of those who came before. Barns across the fields add to the haunting atmosphere. Their doors swing gently, sometimes suddenly, as if operated by invisible hands. Wooden beams groan in response, releasing echoes that carry across the open farmland. Visitors have described the sensation of being watched, not by eyes they can see, but by the unseen spirits of workers who remain tied to the land they loved and tended in life. The wind itself seems alive in Fallen Oak. It moves with intent, sometimes picking up a faint melody that resembles the songs once sung during long days of labor. Travelers who pause to listen often hear rhythms of work. Chants that guided hands through planting, tending, and harvesting. These sounds are subtle, interwoven with the rustle of leaves and the murmur of distant streams, creating an atmosphere that is both eerie and strangely comforting. Paths between fields reveal more traces of the past. Footsteps appear in mud or dust, fading as quickly as they emerge. Some report seeing the shadows of tools lifted and lowered, invisible hands guiding plows or carrying baskets. Even when no one else is present, the air is charged with a sense of movement, as if the land itself remembers the rhythm of human effort that once defined it. Fallen Oak is also home to structures that have resisted time. Farmhouses with sagging porches, weathered fences, and old stone wells bear silent witness to generations that lived, worked, and dreamed here. Windows glow occasionally with unexplainable light, flickering in patterns that mimic lanterns carried by unseen figures. Visitors often describe a feeling of stepping into another era. A world where the living and the departed coexist in quiet parallel. The barns, in particular, seem to hold concentrated energy. Tools hang where they were left, yet sometimes shift or fall without cause. Doors open or close of their own accord, revealing empty stalls or haylofts where shadows move. The sense of presence is most intense as night falls, when the fields are cloaked in darkness and the moonlight casts elongated shapes across the landscape. Sounds that seem to originate from nowhere, soft footsteps, distant voices, or the clatter of a dropped tulla fill the air with tension and mystery. Travelers and locals alike speak of fleeting encounters with figures in old work clothes. They move with deliberate motions, tending to imaginary crops or carrying loads that are invisible to the living eye. Those who follow the figures report being led along paths that wind through the fields. Yet when they turn, the figures vanish, leaving only the whisper of wind in their place. Some describe the sensation of brushing past them, a cold yet gentle touch, like a memory brushing the present. The interplay between wind, shadow, and sound in Fallen Oak creates an immersive experience for those who wander the area. The landscape itself seems alive with memory. Every fence post, barn beam, and stone well acts as a conduit, channeling echoes of the past into the present. Even when the night is still, the energy of former farmhands continues to move through the fields, unseen but unmistakable. The atmosphere is both unsettling and mesmerizing. The open skies, the stretching fields, and the lonely structures form a canvas for the unseen activity that animates the night. Visitors often feel a sense of reverence, aware that they are witnessing a place where history refuses to be forgotten. The songs, whispers, and movements are subtle, almost imperceptible. Yet they leave a lasting impression on those willing to pay attention. Fallen Oak is a reminder that landscapes carry more than physical history. The labor, laughter, and life that once filled the area persist in echoes that the senses can perceive but not fully understand. The land, the barns, and the wind itself tell stories without words, creating an environment where the past and present coexist in haunting harmony. Those who wander through Fallen Oak often leave changed. The memory of ghostly farmhands moving through fields, the subtle melodies of work carried by the wind, and the mysterious movements of barn doors, where the spirit of the land continues to work, sing, and move under the watchful gaze of time. Fallen Oak is not merely a location on a map. It is a living memory, a space where the energy of those who once lived and worked here persists. Visitors experience a sense of presence, a connection to lives long gone, yet somehow still intertwined with the land. The fields, the barns, and the wind tell stories in ways both subtle and profound, creating a hauntingly beautiful reminder that the past never truly leaves a place it has touched. Here, in eastern Kansas, Fallen Oak endures as a testament to time, memory, and the unseen forces that linger long after the last footsteps have faded. It is a place where travelers glimpse the thin veil between what is and what once was, and where the whispers of the past continue to shape the present in ways that are at once mysterious, evocative, and unforgettable. Gray Hollow sits quietly in northern Kansas, a town that seems frozen in time. Its streets are narrow and lined with buildings that have stood for decades. Some show signs of neglect, others perfectly preserved as if waiting for the past to return. At first glance, it appears ordinary, yet those who venture here after dark speak of experiences that defy explanation. Figures in old hats are sometimes seen walking along deserted streets at night. Their movements are deliberate, slow, almost cautious, as if aware of eyes that cannot be seen. They vanish when approached, leaving behind only the sensation of being watched and the faintest echo of footsteps. The streets themselves seem to stretch unnaturally, amplifying the silence and carrying every sound further than it should travel. Windows in Grey Hollow flicker with lights that have no source. Some visitors report seeing rooms illuminated briefly, shadows moving inside, only for the lights to vanish as quickly as they appeared. The flickering is subtle at first, almost easy to dismiss. But it becomes impossible to ignore as it repeats night after night. The town itself seems to breathe with a rhythm that follows no clock, marking time in a way only the ghosts of the past can understand. In the main square, travelers have seen people frozen in motion. Figures stand mid-step, hands raised as if caught in conversation, yet they do not move, do not blink, and offer no acknowledgement of anyone nearby. Those who attempt to approach feel an invisible barrier, a subtle pressure that stops them from closing the distance. When the figures finally vanish, there is no trace left behind, no footprints, no sound, only the empty square echoing with the memory of motion. The atmosphere in Grey Hollow is heavy with the presence of the past. Buildings creak as though settling under unseen weight. And wind carries whispers that cannot be traced to any source. Some visitors report feeling a sudden chill, a coldness that wraps around them even on warm nights, as if the town itself is exhaling through the cracks in its streets and buildings. The effect is disorienting, creating a sense that reality itself has been altered within these boundaries. Deserted homes add to the town's uneasy character. Doors creak open with no one there, and furniture occasionally shifts position between visits. Small details accumulate, subtle signs that the town remembers more than any living resident could. Footsteps echo on empty floors, faint and deliberate, as though someone unseen is pacing through halls long abandoned. Visitors often pause, unsure if the sounds come from their own movement or from an unseen companion. Shadows in Grey Hollow are particularly unsettling. They stretch and twist unnaturally, occasionally separating from their objects or figures. A shadow may linger in a doorway long after a person has passed or seem to move independently, gliding along walls and streets. Some describe seeing fleeting figures at the edges of vision, only for them to dissolve when attention turns fully. The town's darkness seems alive, shaping perception and bending expectation. The main square at night becomes a stage for these spectral appearances. Street lamps cast weak pools of light that reveal glimpses of past life. People appear mid-gesture, frozen in time, or walking slowly across intersections. Onlookers often feel the weight of unseen eyes, a sensation of scrutiny from figures who no longer belong to the world of the living. The experience leaves a lingering unease, a reminder that Grey Hollow is more than a quiet town. Travelers report more than just visual phenomena. Cold breezes sweep down alleys, carrying faint murmurs that seem to echo conversations from long ago. The sound of distant bells or footsteps on cobblestones can appear suddenly, then vanish as if swallowed by the night. Occasionally, an unseen hand brushes against a shoulder or a coat sleeve, leaving a tingling impression that remains long after the moment has passed. Grey Hollow holds memories that are tangible and immediate. Buildings, streets, and squares retain impressions of the people who once filled them. And the town itself seems capable of manifesting these traces. Time feels different here, slower and more elastic, allowing visitors to sense layers of history stacked atop one another. Every step may carry the echo of someone who walked the same path decades ago, leaving invisible traces of life behind. Even in daylight, the town has an unusual quality. Shadows linger longer than they should, and the main square feels empty yet full, alive with unseen motion. Visitors report a subtle sense of being observed, as though every window, doorway, and street lamp is quietly watching. The town seems to respond to attention, revealing its secrets to those who linger long enough to notice, and withdrawing them from those who try to chase them. Grey Hollow is a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Figures in old hats, frozen in motion, wander the streets. Lights flicker in empty windows. And whispers travel on the wind. The town seems to exist between past and present. A space where memory becomes tangible. And the remnants of life linger long after the people have gone. Those who leave Grey Hollow often describe it as haunting and beautiful, unsettling yet mesmerizing. Every night offers new glimpses of its spectral residents and fleeting phenomena. Visitors speak of lights that appear and vanish, and the ever-present sensation of being observed. The town endures as a quiet, living memory, reminding all who enter that some places do not merely preserve historia, they interact with it, drawing the living into the echoes of what once was. Grey Hollow stands as a testament to the persistence of memory. Its streets, windows, and shadows carry stories that refuse to fade. For those who venture here, the experience is unforgettable. A haunting reminder that even the quietest towns can hold secrets that move, watch, and whisper in the night. Whisper Valley in southern Kansas stretches across rolling fields and quiet, forgotten roads. The landscape is punctuated by abandoned schoolhouses, their brick walls weathered and windows darkened by dust and time. Even from a distance, these structures carry a presence, a sense that something remains within them long after the last bell rang. Visitors who approach the schoolhouses speak of faint laughter echoing through empty hallways, soft and elusive, as if the building itself remembers the footsteps of children long gone. The sound lingers in corners and behind doors, fading and returning without pattern. Shadows move along the walls, shifting with the angle of light, sometimes taking shapes that suggest figures paused in mid-motion, only to vanish when directly observed. The wind through Whisper Valley seems to carry voices, sometimes distant, sometimes startlingly close. Travelers have reported whispers calling their names from nowhere in particular, from a hallway, a window, or even the field surrounding the old buildings. The effect is subtle but undeniable, leaving a lingering sense of being watched, guided, or followed by an unseen presence. Inside the abandoned schoolhouses, time feels suspended. Desks are still arranged as though waiting for students, chalkboards bear faint traces of lessons written decades ago. And the scent of aged paper and wood fills the air unnaturally. Doors creak open without touch. And floorboards groan under invisible weight, suggesting movement in spaces that appear empty, but inhabited in ways beyond comprehension. At night, Whisper Valley becomes particularly unsettling. Moonlight spills across the fields, casting long, wavering shadows that seem to crawl toward the schoolhouses. Figures appear at windows or along hallways, just on the edge of perception, disappearing when approached. Lights flicker inside classrooms without any electrical source, illuminating fragments of a past that is alive in echoes, glimpses, and sensations rather than solid forms. Illuminating fragments of a past that is alive in echoes, glimpses, and sensations rather than solid forms. Some visitors report sudden drops in temperature in certain rooms or hallways, a chill that cuts through clothing and leaves the skin tingling. Others feel invisible hands brush past them or a presence leaning close as they walk, heightening the sense of intimacy with the unknown. These encounters are never threatening, but they leave impressions, a reminder that Whisper Valley exists on the boundary between the familiar and the inexplicable. The surrounding landscape contributes to the eerie atmosphere. Fields sway with the wind in waves that seem to mimic human movement. Trees cast gnarled shadows that shift unnaturally with every gust. Even in broad daylight, the area exudes a quiet tension, as though the air itself is charged with memories of those who once inhabited the town, carrying their whispers across empty streets and open fields. As though the air itself is charged with memories of those who once inhabited the town, carrying their whispers across empty streets and open fields. Travelers often describe a sense of copyright déjà vu, a feeling that the places they walk through have been shaped not only by history but by persistent echoes of experience. Small sounds become magnified, a distant creak of a floorboard sounds like footsteps approaching. A gust of wind resembles a faint sigh, and even the soft rustle of leaves takes on a rhythmic pattern that hints at deliberate movement. Every sensory detail contributes to the impression that Whisper Valley is alive, attentive, and unrelenting in its subtle presence. Some encounters are fleeting yet memorable. A shadow briefly crosses a doorway, a chair is found moved slightly from its place, or a faint giggle rings out just beyond hearing. These occurrences are unpredictable, yet they are consistent enough that visitors learn to expect the unexpected. The abandoned schoolhouses, long forgotten by the outside world, retain the impressions of generations, and the echoes of life are embedded into the very structure of the buildings and the land around them. The valley itself seems to amplify perception. Sight, sound, and even touch become unreliable indicators of reality. Figures may appear twice, or the same whisper may be heard from multiple directions at once. Hallways seem longer than they should, shadows linger longer than expected. Familiar landscapes appear subtly altered. Visitors leave with the impression that Whisper Valley is a place where the past bleeds into the present, and where time and memory exist as tangible, perceptible forces. Even for those who do not encounter visible phenomena, the sensation of the unseen is unavoidable. The air carries tension. The landscape feels watched, and the mind is drawn to anticipate movement or sound. There is a subtle narrative embedded in every brick, every tree, and every gust of wind, a story of life, abundance, and absence, and persistent echoes that refuses to fade entirely. Whisper Valley remains a place of curiosity, unease, and fascination. Its abandoned schoolhouses are silent witnesses to lives once lived, yet they continue to speak in laughter, whispers, and shadows. Visitors leave with impressions that linger long after the journey ends, carrying a sense of the uncanny and the profound mystery of a valley where the ordinary world brushes against the extraordinary. In Whisper Valley, silence is never complete. Shadows are never static, and the past never truly departs. Every step along the empty streets, every glance at a darkened window, and every rustle of wind reminds travelers that some places are imbued with memory and presence, echoing across time in ways both subtle and undeniable. The valley invites observation, reflection, and a quiet respect for the unseen, ensuring that those who pass through cannot easily forget the whispers that linger in every corner. Lone Star in central Kansas rests quietly under a wide expanse of sky, its streets stretching straight and empty into the horizon. At night, the town transforms, shedding the familiar for something altogether more mysterious. Shadows grow longer under dim lamplight, and a stillness settles over the buildings, broken only by the occasional whisper of wine through the deserted streets. Travelers crossing the main street often report seeing figures standing silently by lampposts. They are tall, indistinct shapes, observing without movement. When approached, these figures vanish, leaving only the faint impression that something or something has been watching. The sensation of being observed lingers, pressing lightly against the skin and mind of those walking alone. The old storefronts and wooden sidewalks seem to hold echoes of the past. Windows are dark and empty, yet faint reflections suggest movement within. Doors occasionally creak, swinging slowly as if pushed by unseen hands. Some travelers swear they hear muffled voices, low conversations from eras long gone, carried faintly on the wind. Along the edges of town, wagons sometimes roll along the streets with no one inside. Wooden wheels click softly against the pavement, creating a rhythm that seems both distant and immediate. The wagons appear suddenly, gliding forward before fading into the darkness. Witnesses report an uncanny sensation, as if the air itself has grown heavier, and a cold draft brushes against their shoulders. The town's lampposts cast pools of yellow light that illuminate the dust and worn wooden planks beneath them. A man in an old coat stands frozen near a lamppost. A woman in a long dress appears at the corner, vanishing when approached. Each sighting feels like a fragment of a story, half told, existing only in the moment before it slips away. Even the soundscape of Lone Star is strange at night. Footsteps echo where none should be, and the creak of wooden porches seems deliberate. Occasionally, a distant horse whinnies or the soft clang of metal rings out. Though the town has long been without livestock or machinery, these sounds create an atmosphere of heightened awareness, making travelers question every shadow and movement. The abandoned buildings seem to breathe with history. Windows are streaked with dust and age. Yet the faint outlines of past inhabitants can be imagined within. Some say a light flickers behind the panes, moving from room to room, suggesting activity even when the rooms are empty. The sensation of past lives lingering, of memories refusing to fade, permeates every street and alley. The streets themselves are unpredictable. Fog sometimes rolls in from the plains, softening edges and concealing the distance. Within the fog, figures emerge, appearing to step from the past. A horse-drawn wagon glides silently, its driver unseen. A child runs across the sidewalk, laughing faintly before disappearing. Travelers report chills, a sense of unease that is neither threatening nor comfortable, as though the town itself is a liminal space, caught between then and now. Central Kansas winds brush against the edges of Lone Star, carrying faint scents of hay, smoke, and earth. At night, these scents mix with the intangible presence that saturates the streets, creating a sensory experience that is subtle but disquieting. Some visitors feel a tug in their minds, a pull to look toward empty windows or abandoned corners, as if the town is drawing attention to its secrets. Old cemeteries at the outskirts of town add to the sense of history alive in the present. Gravestones lean and sink into the soil, yet travelers report figures moving among them, pausing at markers that have long been forgotten. The wind carries whispers that rise and fall, indistinct but deeply felt, adding to the feeling that Lone Star is a town inhabited not just by memory, but by lingering presences. Even daytime does not fully banish the town's mysteries. Sunlight reveals the worn facades of buildings and the cracks in wooden sidewalks. Yet shadows cling in unexpected corners. Travelers feel moments of hesitation, sensing movement at the edge of vision. Some report the feeling of being followed, a subtle presence that maintains distance yet insists on attention, reminding all who pass that the town is never truly empty. Lone Star's quiet charm masks the complexity of its haunted streets. The combination of fog, shadows, whispers, and sudden glimpses of figures creates a delicate tension, compelling curiosity while inspiring caution. The town is a place where the past and present coexist, where travelers become participants in a story that unfolds slowly, quietly, and sometimes invisibly. The town is a place where the past and present coexist, where travelers become participants in a story that unfolds slowly, quietly, and sometimes invisibly. The town is a place where the past and present coexist, where travelers become participants in a story that unfolds slowly, quietly, and sometimes invisibly. Walking through Lone Star is an exercise in observation and imagination. Every lamppost, every empty storefront, every faint sound of wheels or footsteps invites interpretation. The town is a living memory, a subtle presence that lingers long after the traveler has departed. Shadows stretch, lights flicker, and ghostly figures remain by lampposts, silent and unyielding, a testament to the quiet, enduring mysteries of central Kansas. Shadows stretch, lights flicker, and ghostly figures remain by lampposts, silent and unyielding, a testament to the quiet, enduring mysteries of central Kansas. To experience Lone Star is to feel the weight of time and the persistence of memory. The streets are empty yet alive, the wagons roll with no drivers. And the figures by lampposts remind all who walk there that the past never truly leaves. The town exists as a threshold, a place where the ordinary is touched by the extraordinary. Quietly inviting those who dare to look closer, listen more intently. And consider the unseen stories that linger in every shadow. Ash Hollow in western Kansas is a place where the past lingers, etched into the landscape and the remnants of a once thriving community. The wide, open plains stretch endlessly, dotted with weathered homesteads and abandoned buildings. The air carries a stillness that feels both calming and unsettling, as if the land itself remembers lives long gone. As night falls, the old church at the center of Ash Hollow becomes the focal point of strange occurrences. The church's bell, long silent, sometimes tolls unexpectedly, echoing across the empty streets. The sound carries an eerie resonance, cutting through the wind that sweeps across the plains. Travelers passing through often report feeling a sudden chill, a shiver that runs along the spine as though the bell has awakened something unseen. Figures appear on the church steps at times when no one should be present. They stand motionless, barely illuminated by the moonlight. Some visitors swear the figures vanish the moment they draw near, leaving behind only the impression of movement in the shadows. The sense of being observed is strong. As if the eyes of the past are following every step, every hesitation along the empty roads. The abandoned houses surrounding the church add to the haunting atmosphere. Windows flicker with reflections that cannot be explained. And some visitors report glimpses of shapes moving inside. Doors that were once secured swing open without touch, creaking in the night as if some Ania or something has entered. Even the wind seems purposeful, carrying whispers and distant sounds of life that no longer exists. Visitors often describe a feeling of isolation that is almost tangible. Walking through Ash Hollow, the mind fills with questions about who once lived here and what led them to leave. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the plains, and the faint outlines of former fences and barns create an impression of movement where none exists. Every step across the cracked dirt road seems to awaken memories embedded in the land itself. The churchyard is particularly active, according to those who have spent time here after dark. Tombstones stand in silence, yet visitors sometimes hear faint murmurs or the rustle of fabric. Visitors sometimes hear faint murmurs or the rustle of fabric as if unseen figures are moving among them. The air feels heavier in these spaces, charged with the weight of history and the presence of souls long departed. It is a subtle tension, almost imperceptible, yet impossible to ignore once it is noticed. The bell, when it rings unexpectedly, is often accompanied by a series of subtle phenomena. Lights in nearby homes flicker, shadows shift at the edges of vision. And a low, almost musical vibration can be felt in the chest. Some say it is a warning, a signal from those who remain tethered to this place. Others describe a strange fascination, an inability to turn away from the history that seems alive around them. Even the wind carries stories. It whistles through the cracks in the old buildings, sweeping across the plains in patterns that feel deliberate. At times, it carries the sound of footsteps on dirt, or the faint impression of voices speaking in tones that are almost recognizable. It is as though the land itself is recounting memories, offering glimpses into moments frozen in time. Travelers and paranormal enthusiasts alike have reported a range of encounters. Figures appear at windows, standing silently before vanishing. Shadows dart along the empty streets, disappearing when confronted directly. Doors and shutters move without cause, and cold drafts accompany moments of sudden awareness, making the skin tingle with an unexplainable energy. These experiences are fleeting but memorable, leaving an impression that the past is not entirely gone. Ash Hollow has a rhythm that is unique to the place. The land remembers the laughter of children, the tolling of the church bell, and the quiet moments of everyday life that have long since passed. For those who linger, there is an undeniable connection to the history of the area. The bell, the figures on the church steps, and the movements within abandoned homes all contribute to a sense of continuity. As though the lives that once filled Ash Hollow are still present in some form. Even when the eye sees nothing, the awareness of presence is constant. A subtle reminder that the past can never truly be erased. Walking through Ash Hollow at night, it is impossible to ignore the feeling of being watched. The sensation is not threatening but deeply compelling, urging reflection on the passage of time and the traces left behind by generations. Every structure, every shadow, and every whispering breeze seems to tell a story, a narrative woven into the very fabric of the land. The experience of Ash Hollow is both haunting and beautiful. It is a place where shadows carry memories, and where the church bell, ringing unbidden, bridges the living and the departed. Travelers leave with a sense of awe, a heightened awareness of the unseen, and an understanding that some places retain the essence of those who once called them home. Ash Hollow remains a testament to the persistence of history, memory, and presence. It is a location where time feels fluid, where past and present coexist in a delicate balance. Visitors who journey through the plains at night may encounter glimpses of figures, hear the distant tolling of the church bell, or feel the unseen gaze of those who have not fully departed. The stories of Ash Hollow endure, echoing across the plains and into the hearts of those willing to listen. Here, in western Kansas, Ash Hollow stands as a haunting reminder of the unseen forces that linger long after human activity has ceased. It is a place of mystery, reflection, and subtle wonder, where the past continues to speak in whispers, shadows, and the tolling of a bell that refuses to be silenced. Silent Creek lies quietly in eastern Kansas, a stretch of water winding gently through overgrown fields and abandoned homesteads. The creek itself seems ordinary by day, its waters reflecting the sky and trees around it. Yet as the sun sets and fog rises, the area transforms into a place that feels suspended between past and present. Visitors report hearing children's voices near the creek, soft laughter and faint calls that drift on the evening air. As night deepens, the voices grow clearer, calling out names or repeating phrases that vanish when anyone seeks their source. There is no sign of the children, only the lingering impression that someone, or something, is moving through the mist. Figures appear in the fog, walking slowly along the edge of the water. Those who have seen them describe a feeling of being watched, a quiet pressure that follows each step. The figures vanish when approached, dissolving into the mist as though the fog itself protects their presence. Their movement is hauntingly calm, almost ceremonial, leaving witnesses with a sense of having intruded on a moment outside ordinary time. The remains of old houses line the banks of Silent Creek, remnants of a community long gone. Windows are broken, walls sagging, yet faint lights sometimes flicker within, as if life continues unseen. These glimmers are fleeting, brief flashes that appear in multiple rooms at once, then vanish before anyone can investigate. Visitors feel a strange pull toward these ruins, a sense that the houses retain memories of those who once lived there, and that the creek itself has become a keeper of history. The fog enhances the creek's mystery. It rises thick from the water, curling around tree trunks and fallen fences, swallowing paths and obscuring landmarks. Sounds are muted and distorted, carrying further than they should, or sometimes seeming closer than they are. Footsteps can echo without source, and soft whispers appear to circle the listener, never clearly located. The fog is both barrier and invitation, creating an atmosphere where perception feels unreliable, yet profoundly alive. Animals seem to sense the difference in the night. Birds fall silent, and nocturnal creatures move quietly along the edges of the forest. The usual sounds of water and wind are accompanied by subtle movements that cannot be traced to any visible source. Visitors often pause, feeling the creek itself is attentive, responding to their presence and adjusting its sounds and shadows in ways that suggest awareness. The landscape surrounding Silent Creek is full of hidden history. Fallen fences mark property lines. Stone foundations hint at long-forgotten homes. And the occasional well or root cellar punctuates the overgrowth. At night, these relics take on new meaning. Visitors speak of shadows moving near them. Of indistinct shapes glimpsed from the corner of an eye. And of faint lights shifting within the remains of buildings. Each observation deepens the sense that the creek is not merely a physical location, but a space where memory lingers and life persists invisibly. The creek itself moves silently, a constant undercurrent in a place of subtle disturbances. Water laps quietly against rocks, reflecting the moon and stars. Yet occasionally a ripple appears without wind or current, as if something has disturbed the surface unseen. Those who linger report the sensation of being observed from the opposite bank or from within the fog itself. The creek becomes both guide and guardian, marking boundaries between the present and echoes of the past. Visitors often recount a combination of awe and unease. The children's voices, the slowly moving figures, and the flickering lights within abandoned homes combine to create a world that feels alive yet inaccessible. Time seems to stretch and fold along the banks, moments feeling elongated, yet the experience passes swiftly, leaving a lingering impression long after the observer departs. The experience is personal and intangible, a mixture of wonder and apprehension that defies rational explanation. Silent Creek has a rhythm of its own. Fog thickens and disperses, lights flicker unpredictably. And sounds rise and fall in irregular patterns. Witnesses describe the sensation of moving through layers of time, where the present overlays the past. And both coexist without collision. Even the simplest actions, like walking along a path or peering into a ruin, are framed by the subtle guidance of the unseen inhabitants, whose presence is never overt yet undeniably felt. Their presence is felt in every moment. A constant, underlying hum. For those willing to spend time along the creek, the experience can be transformative. A quiet stillness surrounds the area during the day. But at night it becomes a portal into stories left untold. Lives remembered, and memories embedded in earth, water, and fog. Observers often leave with a heightened awareness of the environment, sensing the delicate interplay between what is visible and what is hidden, and understanding that Silent Creek holds more than it reveals. The lingering voices, the figures in fog, and the illuminated ruins serve as reminders that continue to interact with the living, even as those who created them have disappeared. It is a space of quiet haunting, where the past is never fully gone, and where visitors are welcomed into a subtle dialogue with history itself. Walking along Silent Creek, one senses that the environment is aware and responsive, a living archive of memory. Each step carries the potential for new discoveries, whether glimpsed through a flicker of light, a distant murmur, or a shadow gliding silently through the fog. The experience is at once intimate and expansive, personal yet universal, drawing attention to the ways in which places can remember, even when their original occupants are long gone. Silent Creek is more than a creek. It is a bridge between what was and what remains. A space where whispers, lights, and figures hint at a life that continues unseen. The creek invites observation and reflection, offering visitors a chance to engage with history as a living presence. In the fog, along the water, and within the ruins of old houses, the past lingers, quiet but persistent, reminding all who enter that some places are never truly empty. The creek's whispers fade slowly with the distance traveled away from the water. The fog thins, the lights vanish, and the children's voices become a memory. Yet the impression remains, a sense of having walked among echoes that are neither fully alive nor entirely gone. Silent Creek holds its stories tightly, revealing only fragments. Yet those fragments are enough to leave an indelible mark on all who experience them. The rusty barn stands at the edge of northern Kansas, weathered by decades of sun, wind, and snow. Its paint is long gone, leaving rough timber exposed to the elements. From a distance, the structure seems abandoned, a relic of a farming life that has long moved on. Yet those who venture near quickly realize that the barn carries an unsettling presence, as if it still remembers the people and labor that once filled its walls. At night, the barn seems to awaken. The creak of wooden beams echoes across the fields, sometimes in rhythm with no discernible cause. Doors swing open and shut with gentle force, disturbed by no visible hand. Shadows appear in the moonlight, fleeting figures that resemble farmhands at work, carrying tools, tending to imaginary chores, and vanishing when approached. Travelers report hearing the sounds of old machinery operating, though every piece of equipment has long since rusted or fallen silent. The hum of engines, the clatter of metal, and the distant thump of hammering suggest a presence lingering in the barn, one that continues tasks it has performed for decades. The effect is both eerie and mesmerizing, drawing visitors to the edges of perception where the ordinary and the inexplicable meet. Inside the barn, the air is thick with the scent of aged wood, hay, and lingering memories. Dust motes float in the beams of moonlight filtering through broken windows. Every step across the uneven floorboards produces a resonant sound, as though the barn itself is aware of movement. Shadows flicker along the walls, appearing as silhouettes paused mid-motion, and the imagination fills in their stories with ease. Some have seen figures in tattered overalls walking along the lofts, bending to pick up tools that do not exist. Others sense a presence brushing past them, leaving a cold trail along the skin. A whisper of energy that is both gentle and insistent. Even without direct sight of these entities, the sensation of being observed is undeniable. The barn exudes awareness, an intelligence shaped by years of human activity and labor that continues to echo in the present. The surrounding fields contribute to the unsettling atmosphere. The wind through the tall grasses carries faint noises, sometimes resembling footsteps or the low murmur of conversation. Visitors often report that time behaves strangely near the rusty barn. Moments stretch and compress unpredictably. A brief stay feels like hours. And a long observation may pass in what seems like minutes. Light flickers in the windows, revealing glimpses of movement inside, only to fade when attention is focused. The barn appears to exist in multiple states at once, blending memory, presence, and imagination. There are stories of the barn reacting to human emotion. Those who approach with curiosity may find it revealing traces of its past, while those who approach with fear sometimes feel an intensification of the presence. The creaking boards may echo footsteps more insistently, and shadows may linger longer than before. Every visitor leaves with a distinct impression. A sense that the barn is alive, attentive, and silently recording every action within its vicinity. The rusty barn's history is embedded in every detail. Rusted nails, worn floorboards, and broken stalls tell the story of work, life, and passage of time. The figures that appear are reflections of that history, echoes of laborers who dedicated their days to the land, yet whose presence remains tied to the space. The machinery continues to move in phantom motion, the shadows still enact their daily routines. And the barn carries the energy of the past into the present. At night, the barn's atmosphere intensifies. The moon casts silvery light through the gaps in the timber, illuminating swirling dust that seems to move on its own. The faint hum of long-unused equipment resonates in the ears, sometimes overlapping with footsteps along the loft or the sound of tools clinking on unseen surfaces. Visitors experience a sense of being both participant and observer, as though crossing a threshold between the living world and a memory that refuses to fade. Even when no one is near, the rusty barn projects a sense of watchfulness. Windows reflect fleeting shapes. Doors creak under invisible weight. And shadows form in corners that should remain dark. As the barn communicates through subtle signs. A dialogue of creaks, flickers, and cold drafts that leave an impression far stronger than sight alone. Those who witness these phenomena describe a feeling of quiet reverence. An acknowledgement of the barn's enduring presence and its connection to the lives that once animated it. In the morning, the barn returns to a deceptive calm. Sunlight softens the harsh angles of weathered wood. And the shadows seem less menacing, yet traces of the night remain. Disturbed dust, slightly ajar doors, and lingering chill remind visitors that the barn's unseen inhabitants are never truly gone. The rusty barn in northern Kansas is a space where history, memory, and mystery coexist. Where the ordinary routines of farm life are layered with the extraordinary persistence of the unseen. Where the persistence of the unseen persists. Those who leave the rusty barn carry its impression with them, a quiet awareness of a place where time, presence, and memory converge. The creaking beams, the phantom machinery, and the fleeting shadows are reminders that some places are imbued with life beyond the living. The barn remains a sentinel over the land, a witness to history, and a keeper of stories that continue to unfold for anyone willing to approach with open eyes and receptive senses. Rusty barn is more than wood and nails. It is a threshold. A living memory. And a space where the echoes of human activity persist. Every visitor leaves with the understanding that some places are never truly empty. And that the past can reach forward to touch the present. Quietly, insistently, and without warning. Southern Kansas is a land of vast, open fields stretching far beyond the horizon. During the day, these fields seem calm, golden crops swaying gently in the wind, bathed in sunlight. But at night, the landscape transforms into a place of quiet mystery, where shadows move in ways that defy expectation. Travelers report seeing figures walking silently among the crops. They appear as tall silhouettes, gliding through rows of wheat and corn, never disturbing the plants beneath their feet. Sometimes these shapes vanish when approached, leaving only the impression that someone was there, watching and waiting. The stillness of the fields amplifies every sound, every footstep, even the softest whisper of wind, creating an eerie sense that the land itself is alive with secrets. Old farmhouses dot the horizon, some long abandoned and weathered by time. Windows, dark and empty during the day, occasionally glow with lights at night. Observers passing by swear they see a faint movement behind the glass, curtains shifting as if someone has passed. Yet, when checked in the morning, the houses remain empty, silent, and untouched, the lights and shadows leaving nothing but a lingering unease. The night air carries subtle sounds that seem out of place. A distant creak of a swinging door, a muted rustle among the crops, or the soft sigh of wind through the dry stalks creates a rhythm of anticipation. This presence is never aggressive, but persistent, a quiet reminder that the land is not entirely empty. Travelers speak of feeling watched, a subtle pressure that follows them as they move through fields or along the lonely country roads. Occasionally, wandering figures appear near the edges of property lines. Some are clothed in forms that seem reminiscent of past eras. Their features blurred and indistinct. Observers report the sensation of being drawn toward them. As if the figures are calling attention to something just beyond reach. Yet, when approached, they dissipate into mist or shadow. Leaving the viewer alone with the soft whisper of wind through dry corn stalks. The abandoned barns and sheds of the region are particularly notable. Their wooden boards creak under the pressure of time. And the open spaces inside seem to echo with the past. Travelers have reported lights flickering within these structures, brief illuminations that vanish when anyone steps closer. Inside, shadows move independently, casting long, shifting shapes on walls and floors. The experience is subtle but deeply unsettling, a quiet insistence that the past refuses to remain buried. Even the roads between fields hold an unsettling character at night. Sometimes motionless, sometimes walking along the roadside. The sensation of moving through an unseen world is strong. And the ordinary becomes infused with the extraordinary. The natural sounds of the countryside take on a different tone after dark. Crickets chirp more urgently. An owl calls from the distant tree-line. The wind carries faint echoes that resemble speech, laughter, or sighs. Travelers describe an underlying rhythm in these sounds. As if the land itself is alive with memories and energy. Recalling stories of the past to those patient enough to listen. Abandoned homesteads carry a weight that is tangible. Fences sag, paint peels, and the earth seems scarred by decades of weather and neglect. Yet, at night, these sites become stages for ghostly enactments. Shadows pass across windows, doors creak as though opened by invisible hands, and soft, fleeting lights appear in rooms long empty. Visitors report a sense of presence, a lingering awareness that these places once held life and retain echoes of those who lived there. Crossing the open fields at night is an exercise in both caution and wonder. Every hill, every row of crops, every wind-swept corner carries the potential for a fleeting glimpse of the unseen. Observers describe sudden chills, a subtle tug at the mind, and the sensation that the world around them is more expansive than its physical boundaries suggest. The open plains become both familiar and alien, comforting in their openness yet disquieting in their hidden activity. The experience of empty fields is not one of terror but of quiet intrigue. Figures walking among the crops, shadows shifting in abandoned windows. And lights flickering in old barns. Combine to create a narrative that is felt more than seen. Travelers leave the area with stories of fleeting glimpses. And an enduring impression that the land itself holds memory and presence. Southern Kansas, by day, is serene and unassuming. By night, it is a space where the ordinary and extraordinary meet. Where travelers become witnesses to subtle mysteries. And where the land whispers of lives, events, and figures long past. The open fields, silent houses, and wandering shadows serve as reminders. That even in the quietest places, the past is never truly gone. And the land itself can be alive with stories waiting to be discovered. To experience empty fields is to walk in the presence of history, memory, and the unseen. Every step among the crops, every glance at a distant farmhouse, and every sound carried by the wind invites reflection on the persistence of time and the subtle intersections of past and present. The fields may seem empty, but for those who venture through them after dark, the air is thick with stories, movements, and presences that linger just out of reach, waiting to be noticed. Ghost Corners in central Kansas is a place frozen in time. Where the remnants of everyday life linger in eerie stillness. The town itself is quiet, the wind sweeping across empty streets. And carrying with it the faint scent of dust and old wood. At the heart of this forgotten corner stands the general store. A building that has not seen regular customers for decades. Yet somehow feels alive. The store appears unchanged from the past, with shelves still stocked with items long out of production. Cans of goods, jars of spices, and bottles of soda line the racks as. The air inside is heavy, infused with the smell of aged wood. The faint tang of something more elusive, something intangible, seems to watch silently from every corner. Figures have been reported at the counter, standing perfectly still, their presence almost imperceptible until someone steps closer. Their presence almost imperceptible until someone steps closer. They do not move like ordinary people, yet they give the unmistakable feeling of awareness. The unmistakable feeling of awareness, their eyes seemingly following anyone who enters. The sensation is disquieting, a quiet pressure that makes visitors acutely aware of the emptiness around them. Doors slam without cause, echoing through the store and startling those unaccustomed to the silence. Shadows flit across aisles, passing between shelves where no one can be seen. The lights, though long outdated, flicker sporadically as if responding to unseen energy. Some claim that reaching for a product results in the sensation that an invisible hand has brushed against theirs, leaving a chill in its wake. The wooden floors creak underfoot, yet some report hearing the faint shuffle of footsteps that do not align with their own movements. These sounds are unpredictable, rising and falling, sometimes coming from the very aisles that appear empty. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation, as if the store itself holds its breath, waiting to reveal the stories embedded in its walls. Visitors who linger describe a sense of familiarity and unease intertwined. It is a place that once thrived with daily activity, yet now holds only echoes. Every object seems significant, imbued with the lives that once touched it. A bell above the door rings even when the wind is still. Shadows linger longer than they should. The ambient sounds of a bustling store appear in fragmented whispers. Seems to possess its own energy. Anyone who steps inside. But their presence is undeniable. Only to find the area empty, save for the shelves and the lingering aroma of the past. Time in ghost corners behaves strangely. Daylight casts long shadows that bend unnaturally across the streets and the store interior. At night, the store is transformed, lit only by moonlight streaming through dusty windows. In these hours, the phenomena intensify. Doors open and close, shelves tremble slightly, and the feeling of being watched becomes nearly tangible. Every sense is heightened, every creak and whisper magnified in the quiet of the town. The store is not the only location where visitors have reported unusual activity. Nearby streets, abandoned homes, and old barns contribute to the sense that the entire area is saturated with echoes of life long past. Windows glow briefly as though someone inside has lit a lantern. Faint figures appear at corners, pausing before vanishing into thin air. The experience is subtle yet unforgettable, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who witnesses it. Ghost Corners embodies the idea of presence without form. It is not violent or threatening, but it is persistent. The phenomena are consistent, recurring, and woven into the very fabric of the place. Visitors often describe an internal struggle between curiosity and fear. Feeling drawn deeper into the town while simultaneously aware of an unseen observer in every shadow. The general store itself serves as a focal point for this tension. Every shelf, every counter, every creaking floorboard seems to hold fragments of the past. The presence of unseen figures, the sound of doors moving, and the fleeting shadows combine to create an atmosphere where history and the present coexist. Time appears layered here, past events bleeding subtly into the present moment. For those willing to explore, the experience is both unsettling and captivating. Each visit reveals small details, a displaced item, a light flicker, a shadow in a peripheral glance. These occurrences are often fleeting, leaving more questions than answers. Yet the sense of continuity is undeniable, as if the town itself remembers and responds to every step, every gaze, every breath of those who wander within its bounds. Ghost Corner stands as a testament to the lingering echoes of life once lived. It is a place where emptiness does not signify absence, but presence in another form. Figures may come and go, shadows may flicker and vanish. But the energy of the town remains constant. A quiet reminder that memory, history, and presence are not bound by time alone. Visitors leave Ghost Corners with a sense of awe and reflection. The general store, with its silent observers and moving shadows, becomes a symbol of the unseen threads connecting the living and the departed. Every creak, every flicker of light, and every subtle brush of air reinforces the reality that this place is alive in ways that are intangible yet unmistakable. In central Kansas, Ghost Corners continues to captivate those who seek it out. It is a location where history persists, where spectral figures linger in aisles and behind counters. And where every step taken reveals new dimensions of a world that exists just beyond the visible. The general store stands as a beacon for the curious, a reminder that some places retain the essence of life, even when all else has fallen silent. Walking through ghost corners, one cannot help but feel connected to a history that refuses to be forgotten. The figures at the counter. The shadows along the shelves. And the sudden movement of doors all serve as reminders. That presence can endure beyond the limits of time. This small, quiet town holds stories in its walls. Whispers in its air. And memories in every corner. Inviting those who enter to witness the unseen. And consider the mysteries that linger in the heart of central Kansas. Dark Hollow stretches across the flat plains of western Kansas, a quiet landscape where the wind whispers across dry grass and abandoned farmland. By day, the hollow seems empty, an ordinary expanse of land marked by old railway tracks and weathered buildings. But as night falls, the area transforms, revealing a world that exists alongside the one familiar to travelers. Visitors report faint whispers drifting on the wind, voices that call their names softly and disappear when sought. The sound is subtle at first, barely distinguishable from the sigh of the wind, yet it grows more persistent as darkness deepens. Those who linger describe the sensation of being followed, an unseen presence moving just beyond the edge of vision. Each whisper carries a weight, a suggestion that the hollow is alive in ways not immediately visible. Along the railway, ghostly figures appear, often seen from the corner of the eye. They move slowly, almost deliberately, along the tracks. Their forms indistinct and shimmering in the darkness. When looked at directly, the figures vanish, leaving nothing but the silent echo of movement. Travelers describe a chill that follows them after sighting these apparitions. A cold that lingers in the bones. And a sense that the figures are aware of being observed. Buildings along Dark Hollow contribute to its eerie atmosphere. Sometimes glow with an unnatural light, flickering behind dust-streaked glass. Appears without source, illuminating empty rooms and casting long, shifting shadows on the ground. Observers speak of shapes glimpsed within these glowing windows, silhouettes that vanish when approached. The effect is subtle yet unsettling, creating the impression that life continues within these structures, though no one is present. The railway itself seems to hold a presence. Rusted tracks and wooden ties stretch into darkness. And the air is charged with the feeling of anticipation. Some report hearing distant footsteps along the rails. The echo of boots striking metal and gravel, though the tracks remain empty. Others hear the sound of an unseen train passing through, the distant horn carrying over the hollow. Yet no train is ever seen. The railway acts as both a boundary and a corridor, a place where the living and unseen converge. Dark Hollow's landscape is dotted with remnants of the past. Weathered barns, collapsed fences, and scattered foundations hint at a once thriving community now reduced to memory. In the night, these remnants become more than objects. Shadows appear to move within the structures, and light flickers across broken windows. The effect is subtle yet immersive, giving the impression that the hollow itself remembers and reflects the lives that once existed there. Visitors often describe a tension that builds gradually. The hollow feels alive, responsive, and attentive. Sounds that seem natural by Dia the wind, rustling grass, distant wildlife take on different qualities at night. Footsteps seem closer than they are, and whispers appear from directions that should hold nothing. Each sound is amplified by the empty landscape, creating an experience that is as psychological as it is sensory. The ghostly figures along the railway often appear at intervals, moving with an unhurried purpose. They do not interact with the living directly, but their presence is undeniable. Observers describe a simultaneous feeling of curiosity and apprehension, drawn to watch yet hesitant to approach. The figurisa movements are rhythmic and deliberate, almost ceremonial, leaving witnesses with a sense of having intruded upon a quiet ritual that has existed long before their arrival. The glowing windows add to the hollow's mystique. At times, the light pulses or shifts color slightly, illuminating objects and spaces inside that are otherwise unoccupied. Shadows stretch across walls and floors, forming shapes that vanish when investigated. Some claim to see figures seated or standing within these lit spaces, motionless yet perceptible. The phenomenon creates a layered effect, blending the physical and spectral into a single experience that is difficult to explain or dismiss. Wind and fog often enhance the Hollowa's atmosphere. Thick fog rolls across the plains, curling around buildings and railway tracks, softening edges and creating the illusion of movement where none exists. Whispers carry through the fog in ways that defy expectation, sometimes appearing close, then distant, creating a disorienting sense of space. The interplay of wind, light, and shadow heightens the perception of unseen activity, leaving visitors acutely aware of the Hollowa's otherworldly qualities. Dark Hollow is a place where time feels suspended. The night stretches longer than expected, each moment layered with perception and memory. Visitors often find themselves hesitant to move, captivated by subtle movements and faint sounds. The Hollow encourages careful observation, rewarding those who notice the smallest anomalies: a ripple in fog, a fleeting shadow, a whisper carried on the wind. Each encounter is unique, leaving a lasting impression on those who venture into this Kansas landscape. The Hollow also carries a sense of history and loss. Structures in decay, rusting rails, and abandoned homesteads serve as reminders of lives that have passed through this land. The ghostly figures and glowing windows are extensions of memory, preserving fragments of human activity and emotion. Travelers sense that Dark Hollow is not merely haunted by the supernatural, but by the persistence of human experience, captured and refracted through the landscape. Encounters in Dark Hollow vary. Some visitors see the figures along the railway for a fleeting moment before they vanish. Others hear whispers that seem to mimic their thoughts or call their names directly. Some witness the glowing windows alone in the night, while others experience all phenomena simultaneously. The landscape returns to silence as dawn approaches. Fog recedes, whispers fade, and the figures disappear. Windows lose their glow, and the railway lies empty once more. Yet the impressions remain, a lingering awareness that something beyond ordinary perception has been encountered. Visitors leave with a sense that the Hollow retains its secrets, offering only glimpses to those willing to observe carefully and respect its quiet power. Dark Hollow is more than a place. It is a living presence, a space where the ordinary blends with the extraordinary. It invites exploration, reflection, and awareness of forces beyond immediate understanding. Shadows, whispers, and glowing windows mark the landscape, creating an environment that is mysterious, atmospheric, and hauntingly beautiful. For those who journey through western Kansas, Dark Hollow leaves a memory of wonder, tension, and the lingering sensation of having crossed into a space where the past and unseen coexist, quietly and persistently. Lone Willow sits quietly in eastern Kansas, a town that seems frozen in time. The streets are empty, yet those who pass through the square sometimes see shadows of children playing. Their laughter drifts faintly in the wind, echoing across the cracked pavement, though no one is visible. The buildings surrounding the town square are worn, their paint peeling, windows dusty and opaque. In doorways, figures of adults appear, frozen mid-motion, as if captured in the act of a daily task that never concludes. They remain still, yet their presence is undeniable, casting long shadows that stretch across the streets in the glow of streetlights and moonlight. Travelers report feeling icy hands brush past them as they walk through the quiet streets. The sensation is brief but intense, leaving a lingering chill that runs along the spine. Some say the air itself feels heavier here, as if carrying the weight of countless unspoken memories, whispered conversations, and lost moments. At night, the town seems to shift. Street lamps flicker, casting intermittent light across the square. Shadows move in ways that defy explanation, appearing and vanishing within the same blink. The echo of footsteps follows closely behind those brave enough to explore, yet when they turn, no one is there. In the abandoned houses, lights sometimes appear behind curtains, soft glows that flicker as though someone has entered a room. Visitors have glimpsed figures at the windows, observing silently before disappearing. The feeling of being watched is pervasive, and it lingers long after leaving the town. The town square itself holds the most activity. Children's shadows dart across empty streets, chasing one another, playing games that only they can see. Their energy is palpable yet elusive. Their forms shimmering before fading into nothing. The square carries the weight of their presence, blending playfulness with unease. Old storefronts tell their own stories. Signs hang crookedly, swinging gently in the wind without any apparent source of movement. Doors open slowly, creaking as though responding to an invisible hand. The smell of aged wood, dust, and faint smoke drifts from the buildings, mixing with the cool night air. Every step taken through the town seems to awaken something long dormant, as if Lone Willow itself is alive with memory. Some visitors speak of fleeting conversations. Whispers drift through empty streets, sometimes forming words, sometimes dissolving into nothing. The voices are distant yet clear, the tone gentle, almost guiding, though the source is unseen. Travelers have reported feeling a presence walking alongside them, just beyond the edge of sight, and the sensation persists until they leave the town limits. The cemetery at the edge of Lone Willow adds to the haunting atmosphere. Gravestones rise from the ground, weathered by time and surrounded by unkempt grass. Shadows of figures are seen moving between the stones, pausing as if in remembrance. The faint sound of a lullaby drifts from this area, though no living person is near. Even during the day, the town carries a spectral quality. Sunlight filters through dusty windows, illuminating shapes that seem to move independently of any solid form. The quiet is profound, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through dead leaves or the distant call of a crow. Travelers describe a feeling of stepping into a world where time folds in on itself, where the line between the living and the departed is blurred. Where the line between the living and the departed is blurred. Visitors often leave Lone Willow with an unsettling awareness. The streets, the buildings, and the open square all convey a presence that cannot be explained through ordinary perception. Shadows of children continue to play, adults remain in doorways, and the town seems to remember every step, every laugh, and every whisper. The town's isolation contributes to its eerie nature. Roads leading in and out are long and winding, flanked by tall grasses and trees that sway in the slightest breeze. Travelers report feeling drawn back, as if the town calls to those who have witnessed its strange activity, inviting them to see more, to understand the history embedded in every corner. At night, the interplay of light and shadow becomes most pronounced. Figures seem to stretch and contract, their forms shifting with the flickering of lamps. Even the wind seems to carry intention, brushing past travelers with a gentle but insistent touch. Each visit leaves a distinct impression, a sense that the town is not merely a place, but a living repository of memory and presence. Lone Willow is more than an abandoned town. It is a space where the echoes of its former inhabitants persist. Where children's laughter and whispers of adults remain imprinted. Every building, every street corner, and every shadow tells a story, inviting those who pass through to witness, to feel, and to sense the invisible lives that continue to inhabit the town. The experience of Lone Willow lingers long after leaving. Visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched. Of footsteps that may or may not be real. And of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen. A place where memory and spirit converge. Leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Long after leaving, visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched, of footsteps that may or may not be real, and of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen, a place where memory and spirit converge, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Long after leaving, visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched, of footsteps that may or may not be real, and of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen, a place where memory and spirit converge, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Long after leaving, visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched, of footsteps that may or may not be real, and of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen, a place where memory and spirit converge, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Long after leaving, visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched, of footsteps that may or may not be real, and of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen, a place where memory and spirit converge, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Long after leaving, visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched, of footsteps that may or may not be real, and of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen, a place where memory and spirit converge, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Long after leaving, visitors carry with them the subtle awareness of being watched, of footsteps that may or may not be real, and of the quiet, persistent presence of those who remain. The town exists as a testament to the unseen, a place where memory and spirit converge, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to walk its empty streets. The experience of Lone Willow lingers. Lone Willow reminds travelers that some places are never truly empty, that the past can reach forward in subtle and sometimes chilling ways, and that the echoes of life remain, even when life itself has moved on. The town is quiet, yet it speaks to those willing to listen, inviting them into a world where shadows play, figures linger, and the unseen is always just a step away. Northern Kansas stretches wide and empty, a landscape of golden fields and long-forgotten roads. By day, they appear still, weathered, and lifeless. But at night, the atmosphere shifts, carrying a sense that the past is not truly gone. Visitors often speak of the farmhouses seeming to breathe. The wooden walls and sagging roofs appear to inhale and exhale with the wind. Lights flicker unexpectedly on porches, briefly illuminating the peeling paint and rusting fences, only to fade into darkness. Shadows appear in the windows, figures that pause to watch silently before vanishing when approached. These glimpses are fleeting, leaving a lingering unease that something unseen remains present. The wind in broken prairie carries more than the scent of dry earth. It brings faint voices, echoes of old conversations that seem almost human, yet just beyond comprehension. These sounds drift through the empty fields, sometimes coming from the direction of a barn or a weathered farmhouse. Travelers report feeling the pull of these murmurs, a subtle tug that encourages them to move closer, even when reason insists they should keep distance. Roads that cut through the prairie are narrow and winding, often lined with wild grasses taller than the tires of a passing vehicle. At night, headlights illuminate only a short stretch, and the darkness beyond seems to hold movement. Some visitors have seen shadowy figures walking along the edges of the fields, never making a sound, and disappearing when approached. The effect is disorienting, a reminder that broken prairie exists in a layer between memory and reality. Inside the abandoned homes, the atmosphere is heavier. Doors creak open by themselves, floors groan under invisible weight. And old furniture shifts slightly as though someone has passed by. Windows often hold vague reflections of figures not present, faces blurred and indistinct, watching from a distance. Even the simplest action, like stepping into a kitchen or a bedroom, can bring an unexpected chill, as if the space is aware of every movement. Barns and outbuildings add to the mysterious aura. Visitors speak of lights appearing within the darkness, small glows that vanish the moment someone approaches. The structure itself seems to pulse with energy, creating a sensation that the past is alive. Replaying fragments of long-forgotten routines, conversations, and moments. Travelers report a sense of being followed, though no one is present. The feeling is subtle at first, a pressure in the air, a brush of wind against the neck. Sometimes it manifests as footsteps echoing behind on empty floors. Or soft sounds like the clink of a cup on a table. The prairie amplifies every noise. And even distant sounds seem immediate and close, making the experience deeply immersive. The fields surrounding broken prairie are also not as empty as they appear. Figures are said to move among the crops, fleeting glimpses that vanish when observed directly. Some stand still, watching silently, only to fade into mist or shadow when approached. The open landscape contributes to the sensation that the entire area is aware, that every path, every abandoned building, every lonely fence line holds a memory or a presence waiting to be acknowledged. Even the sky above broken prairie adds to its eerie quality. Moonlight casts long shadows across fields, illuminating the silhouettes of broken fences and leaning barns. The interplay of light, shadow, and sound creates a layered experience that leaves a lasting impression on anyone passing through. Broken prairie is a place of quiet reflection and subtle unease. The abandoned farmhouses, flickering lights, and shadowy figures combine to form a landscape that feels alive with memory. Travelers leave with stories of fleeting glimpses, whispers on the wind, and the persistent feeling that the prairie is more than it appears, a repository of lives and moments that continue to exist long after the people have gone. To walk through broken prairie is to experience a tension between stillness and presence. Every farmhouse, field, and shadow seems to hold a story. The air carries remnants of conversations and movements. And the landscape itself feels sentient. For those willing to travel its roads and approach its abandoned homes, the prairie offers an intimate glimpse into a world where the past is not lost. And every step may reveal something unseen, lingering just at the edge of perception. Broken prairie remains a place of mystery, its open fields and silent homes inviting exploration while maintaining an atmosphere of respectful distance. The experience is immersive, a journey into a land where light and shadow, memory and presence, merge into a living tapestry of stories that the wind carries onward, waiting for each new traveler to witness what has never truly left. Rust Hollow in southern Kansas is the final stop on our journey through forgotten towns and lingering spirits. It sits quietly in the lowlands, often shrouded in thick morning fog that creeps along empty streets and abandoned buildings. The town appears frozen in time, where every structure holds the weight of history, and the air itself seems heavy with memories that refuse to fade. Walking through Rust Hollow, visitors often report an immediate sense of being observed. Shadows move along alleyways where no one can be seen. Faint shapes form in the mist, appearing just beyond the edge of vision. Figures emerge slowly, their outlines indistinct, then vanish before a clear look can be taken. There is a rhythm here, a quiet pulse of presence that is almost tangible, as if the town itself is breathing with unseen life. As if the town itself is breathing with unseen life. The streets are lined with old wooden buildings, their paint peeling and windows clouded with age. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, the silhouettes of wagons appear to roll slowly across the cobblestones, their wheels turning without human hands. The sound of distant creaking accompanies them, though no one can be found to explain it. It is as though the echoes of past routines continue, replaying in a loop only the town can maintain. Visitors describe the sensation of being followed, a pressure at the edge of perception that intensifies with every step. Footsteps echo behind them when no one is there. And soft whispers drift through the fog, brushing against the ears and sending chills down the spine. The experience is subtle, yet persistent. Leaving an awareness that the town is not empty. That unseen eyes trace every movement. The old general store stands as a silent sentinel at the center of Rust Hollow. Its doors creak open and shut on their own, the hinges groaning as if struggling against an invisible weight. Inside, shelves are still stocked with goods long out of production. Items shift slightly when no one is near, as if hands unseen are rearranging them. Those who linger report the faint impression of figures moving between the aisles, watching silently and vanishing when approached. Abandoned homes add to the haunting atmosphere. Windows glow faintly in the fog, casting distorted light onto the empty streets. Sometimes, figures can be glimpsed pacing behind these windows, only to disappear the moment one draws nearer. The town's silence amplifies every sound of the wind rattling shutters, a branch scraping against a roof, the faint groan of floorboards, and the absence of life makes every subtle movement feel amplified and intentional. Rust Hollow has its own patterns of activity. At dawn, the fog rolls in thicker along the lowlands, and the town transforms into a realm where the living and the spectral seem to coexist. Figures appear on streets, in doorways, and near abandoned wells. Their motions are deliberate yet fleeting. A visitor might catch the curve of a hat, the sway of a coat, or a hand reaching for a lantern, only for it all to dissolve into mist moments later. Those who spend time in Rust Hollow often speak of a heavy presence that is neither hostile nor welcoming, but attentive. It is a place where the past is held close, and memories of those who once lived here linger, shaping the atmosphere in subtle ways. Even the wind seems purposeful, carrying voices that cannot be traced and smells that evoke life long gone. The town's outskirts hold remnants of agricultural life, rusted fences, and abandoned barns. Visitors report that following these wagons feels disorienting, as though the landscape itself shifts slightly, keeping the wagons just out of reach. It is a place where perception is challenged, and the ordinary rules of movement and sound do not always apply. Even at midday, Rust Hollow exudes an unsettling calm. The sun filters through fog in pale beams, illuminating dust motes that seem to dance with intent. Shadows cling to walls longer than they should, and subtle movements are noticed from the corner of the eye. The town feels alive in its own enigmatic way. As if every building, every street, every artifact holds the memory of life, and the traces of those who remain in spirit. Visitors describe a mixture of fascination and unease. The allure of Rust Hollow is in its timeless quality. The way it preserves moments of existence, while overlaying them with the intangible. Every creak, every flicker of light, every fleeting figure contributes to a sense that the town is not abandoned, but inhabited by memories that demand recognition. Walking through Rust Hollow, one senses a continuity between past and present. The figures in the fog, the moving wagons, the shifting objects inside abandoned structures. All of these occurrences serve as reminders that history leaves more than traces. It leaves a presence, a resonance that persists even when the people themselves are gone. For those who venture here, Rust Hollow is an immersive experience. A town where curiosity and caution intertwine. The quiet streets, the misty corners, and the lingering figures invite exploration while maintaining a respectful distance. It is a place that challenges perception, evokes reflection, and leaves an indelible impression on those who witness it. As the fog lifts and the sun begins to touch the lowlands, Rust Hollow remains unchanged. Its streets empty, its figures hidden, yet the awareness of its haunting presence persists. That echoes of the past continue to move in subtle ways. And that even in silence, the story of a town can speak volumes. Rust Hollow concludes our journey through southern Kansas, leaving visitors with the lingering feeling that the world of the unseen is closer than it appears. The figures in the fog, the rolling wagons, and the unseen eyes create an atmosphere of quiet mystery. One that invites contemplation of the past and a deeper appreciation for the layers of history that exist just beyond perception. Kansas is filled with quiet towns, where the wind sweeps across the plains, but some places are never truly empty. The abandoned farm towns hold memories of life, labor, and laughter. But the past refuses to stay silent. Shadows linger, whispers echo, and figures watch from windows, doorways, and the mist over the fields. Thank you for walking through these haunted farm towns with me. If you ever find yourself on a lonely road in Kansas after sunset, remember the towns that are lost to silence, and the unseen eyes that still watch. Which of these haunted farm towns would you dare to enter alone? Stay safe, stay aware, and never ignore the quiet that speaks.